The gym went dead silent. Not the polite kind of quiet. The kind that happens when 30 hardened fighters suddenly realize they've been wrong about someone, and they can't take it back. 1 second, Travis Kane had his hand locked around the wrist of a maintenance worker in a faded gray shirt. The next second, Travis was on the mat. Nobody saw the transition. Not really. It happened too fast, too clean, like watching a language you didn't know being spoken perfectly. The man standing over him didn't look angry, didn't look proud. He just looked tired. And that was somehow the most terrifying part. Before we go further, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment below and tell me what city or country you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. And if this opening just stopped your scroll, hit like. Because what you're about to hear, you won't see coming. Stay with me, all the way to the end. The thing about Blackridge Combat Club was that it had a smell. Not just sweat. Every gym smelled like sweat. This was something older, more layered, rubber mats baked by years of body heat. The metallic sting of blood that never quite washed out from the seams in the floor. Cheap industrial cleaner mixed with chalk dust and the faint ghost of whatever somebody's protein shaker had spilled 2 years ago and been mostly wiped up. Cole Maddox breathed it in every night around 9:30, like most people breathe in coffee at 7 in the morning. Familiar. Grounding. His. He wasn't there to fight. He was there to fix a broken cable anchor on the far wall pulley machine, replace the cracked rubber grip on the heavy bag closest to the east window, and patch the section of flooring near the water fountain that had started peeling at the corner and was becoming a trip hazard. The work order was taped to his toolbox in Marcus Vale's handwriting, tight, military print letters that left no room for interpretation. Cole worked the same way. He moved through the gym like a shadow that had learned to respect the space it occupied. Careful with the toolbox when he set it down so it didn't clang, timing his hammer taps to the gaps between music beats so he didn't interrupt a fighter's rhythm. He kept to the walls, the equipment room, the corners, the geography of a man who had spent years training himself to be the least interesting thing in any room he entered. It worked. In the 3 months Cole had been doing maintenance at Blackridge 3 nights a week, most of the fighters had formed a general impression of him that amounted to guy, gray shirt, quiet, fixes stuff. A few of the more attentive ones had upgraded this too. Single dad, daughter at school, decent guy, doesn't bother anyone. That was exactly where Cole wanted to stay. He had a system. He'd drop Avery at his neighbor Linda's apartment by 8. Linda was 63, widowed, and treated Avery like a borrowed grandchild in the best possible way. Then drive the 11 minutes to Blackridge, work until closing, pick up Avery if she was still awake, or collect her sleeping form like cargo he'd carry to bed if she wasn't. Avery was 9. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness, which meant she was simultaneously the best and most exhausting person Cole had ever known. She also had a talent for asking questions that had no good answers. "Daddy, what do you do at the gym?" "Fix things." "Like what?" "Machines, equipment, stuff that breaks." "Do you fight people?" Long pause. "No, baby, I just fix things." That was the truest answer he could give her, and he'd meant it when he said it. He wasn't there to fight. He was done with that. The real version of it, anyway. The version that happened in places where the rules were written in a language most people never learned. Cole was on his back under the cable pulley machine, flashlight in his teeth, trying to rethread a cable that had slipped its guide wheel when he first heard it. A sound he recognized before he consciously identified it. The particular quality of laughter that has a target. He didn't move immediately. He stayed on his back, hands still working the cable, and just listened. The main floor had about 20 fighters running an open practice session. Tuesday nights were loose, people came in to drill, roll, work combinations with partners. Marcus usually supervised from the corner chair with his arms folded and his coffee going cold on the equipment table, stepping in when technique broke down or egos started expanding to dangerous size. But Marcus had stepped out 20 minutes ago. Something about a phone call in the parking lot, and in the 20 minutes since, a particular gravitational pull had started forming on the left side of the main floor. Cole finished threading the cable before he looked. Travis Kane was 26 years old, 6'1", and built like someone had taken a wrestler's frame and given it a sprinter's conditioning. He had a face that photographed well. Strong jaw, easy smile, the kind of features that made him look approachable in still images in a way that in motion came across as predatory. He was also, by any objective measure, the best fighter at Blackridge. 14 wins in regional competition, 0 losses. A stand-up game that blended kickboxing and wrestling in a way that suggested real talent underneath the ego, which made the ego worse because it was at least partially earned. Travis had walked into Blackridge at 17 with something to prove and had spent 9 years turning that something into a religion. He trained harder than anyone. He arrived earlier, stayed later. He had the calluses and the fight record to back up the attitude. But attitude, Cole had learned long before he ever heard of Blackridge, was what happened to talented people when nobody ever cost them enough. Right now, Travis was standing over a kid named Darnell, who was sitting on the mat trying to collect what remained of his dignity. Darnell was 19, 3 weeks at Blackridge. He had the loose, unformed physicality of someone who'd spent their adolescence somewhere between skinny and average and was trying to change that, which meant he had heart but no technique and absolutely no business being in the same grappling round as Travis Kane. Travis had taken him down in about 4 seconds, which would have been fine. That's sparring, that's learning, that's the whole point. Then he'd ground and pounded him for 30 seconds after Darnell tapped, pulling the strikes but making the point, and then stood over him while the kid tried to catch his breath and said, loudly enough for the whole floor to hear, "You need to find a different hobby, man. Seriously, like knitting or something." The fighters around them laughed. Not all of them. Cole noticed the ones who didn't. A guy named Reyes near the bag racks who looked at the floor. A woman named Chen who turned back to her shadowboxing a little too deliberately. Darnell was trying not to look like he was in pain. He was doing a bad job of it. Cole set down his flashlight. He crossed the floor without hurrying, picked up the small towel from the bench near the edge of the mat, and crouched beside Darnell. "You catch anything from that?" Darnell blinked. He hadn't expected someone to crouch down and actually ask him a question. "What?" "From the round, did you catch anything useful, or did it happen too fast?" Darnell touched his lip, checked his fingers. A little blood. "I don't know. Too fast, I think." "That's fine, fast is information." Cole handed him the towel. "Tilt your head back just slightly, not all the way. Breathe through your nose." "Okay." "Your base was wide when he shot on you. You felt it happen, right? The second before?" Darnell's expression shifted, someone asking him a technical question instead of staring at him with pity. Yeah, I think so." "That feeling's worth remembering. That's the whole lesson right there." Cole started to straighten up. "Hey." He turned. Travis Kane was standing 4 feet away with his arms crossed and an expression Cole recognized from very far back. Not from this gym, not from any gym, but from the particular look certain men got when their performance had just been accidentally upstaged by someone who wasn't performing. "You his babysitter now?" The room was quiet. Music still playing, but bodies still. Cole looked at Travis for one moment. Measured, registered, filed. Then he turned back and walked to pick up his toolbox. That was the moment Cole would later identify. Not when Travis shoved him, not when the fight actually happened, but this one. Because he knew what the silence meant. He'd seen it before, in places where the consequences were permanent rather than social. When a man like Travis went quiet after a jab fell flat, it wasn't retreat. It was recalibration. Cole had just become interesting to him, and that was a problem. Cole had been a maintenance worker at Hayward Manufacturing for 2 years and 3 months. He knew this number precisely because he'd started the job 11 days after he finalized Avery's custody papers, which made the employment date emotionally significant in a way he'd never shared with anyone, including his supervisor Derek, who was a decent man and wouldn't have known what to do with that information. The job suited him. It required precision, patience, and the ability to diagnose problems by listening more than looking. The noise of the factory floor, the hydraulics, the stamping machines, the conveyor rhythms, created a kind of white noise that Cole found easier to exist inside than silence. Silence had content he preferred not to engage with. The maintenance gig at Blackridge was secondary income, $40 per session, 3 sessions a week. It paid Avery's after-school art program, which she was passionate about in the focused, slightly alarming way she was passionate about everything she cared about. She was currently in a phase of painting extremely detailed portraits of animals in historical settings. Last week it had been a red fox attending what appeared to be a Renaissance-era council meeting. And Cole had taped every single one to the refrigerator until the door was more painting than refrigerator. He didn't fight in his spare time. He didn't train in his spare time, not formally. But he'd been doing the things that kept certain capabilities functional since he was 19 years old, and those habits didn't stop just because the mission set changed. He ran 4 miles every morning before Avery woke up. He did pull-ups on the bar mounted in the hallway doorframe. He stretched with the specific focus of a man who understood what inflexibility cost. And sometimes, when Avery was asleep and the apartment was quiet in its loud way, the radiator ticking, a neighbor's television through the wall, he'd sit on the floor with his back against the couch and breathe through sequences he'd been taught in a facility that no longer officially existed, by instructors who had no last names. He wasn't training, he was maintaining. The difference mattered to him. But Marcus Vail had purchased Blackridge 8 years ago from a semi-retired boxer named Anthony who'd run it as a pure boxing gym for 20 years and was tired of the overhead. Marcus had kept the name, added grappling and MMA training, and built it into something that genuinely served the neighborhood. Affordable memberships, youth programs on Saturday mornings, a no-questions-asked financial hardship policy for fighters who were clearly working hard but clearly also broke. He was a compact man, 52, with a gray streak goatee and the permanent stillness of someone who had, at some point in their life, sat in places where stillness was the difference between being seen and not being seen. Cole had recognized it on the first night he came to fix a drainage issue in the locker room. The particular quality of attention Marcus paid to his surroundings. The way he entered a room like he was reading it before he stepped into it. They didn't talk about it. They didn't need to. Marcus had hired Cole through a referral from Derek at Hayward, and their relationship had stayed professional in the comfortable way that suited them both. Marcus provided the work orders, Cole completed them, they exchanged maybe 40 words per session. But Marcus watched. Cole knew that too. The week after the Darnell incident, Cole arrived at Blackridge to find the east window heavy bag had developed an additional problem. The chain mount had started pulling from the ceiling bracket, which was going to be a bigger fix than the work order suggested. He went to find Marcus to discuss what the repair would require before he tore into the ceiling. He found him in the back office, which was less an office than a room that had given up on having a purpose and settled for having a desk. Marcus was watching footage on a laptop. Fight footage, which Cole had expected. But the footage was old, the resolution poor, the background somewhere Cole didn't recognize but felt something about. He knocked on the open door. Marcus turned the laptop slightly. Not fully closed, Cole caught a glimpse of a desert context. Sandbags. Equipment that wasn't gym equipment. Chain mount on the east bag, Cole said. It's pulling the bracket. I need to go into the ceiling joists, which means I should probably know if there's electrical in that section before I start. Marcus nodded. There's a conduit about 6 inches south of the bracket. Pull the plate and you'll see it. You'll have clearance if you stay north. He said it with the precision of someone who had looked at that ceiling and noted the conduit's position, not because it was relevant to running a gym, but because he noted things like that. Because knowing the infrastructure of your environment was a category of knowledge that got trained into certain people and never fully left. Cole noted it. I'll stay north, he said. He was at the door when Marcus spoke again. You were watching Travis last Tuesday. Not a question. Cole didn't turn around. I was working near the main floor. You were watching him. A beat. He put his hands on a kid who'd already tapped, Cole said. Then he stood over him. I was aware of it. Most people aren't aware of it in that specific way. Cole looked back then. Marcus was looking at him with an expression that wasn't accusatory and wasn't curious in the simple sense. It was the expression of a man assembling a picture he'd started building without being entirely sure what he was building. I'll get started on the bracket, Cole said. Marcus let him go. 2 days later, Travis targeted him directly for the first time. Cole was near the equipment racks, reattaching a loose shelf bracket, when Travis finished a bag round and dropped his gloves on the bench 6 feet away. He stood there toweling off, and Cole could feel it. The same way you felt weather changing, the pressure shift before a storm, that all the apps in the world couldn't quite capture the way your body did if you'd spent enough time outside. Travis was performing, waiting for an audience. His training partner, a guy named Hicks, who Cole had assessed as medium talent and high loyalty to Travis, leaned against the rack eating a protein bar. You see that combination? Travis said to Hicks, loud enough. Clean, Hicks confirmed. Been working the entry, that overhand into the takedown. You wait for them to cover high and they walk into it. Smooth. Efficient. Travis glanced at Cole. Not quite eye contact. The sight of it. Efficient is the right word. Why use more than you need to, right? Cole was tightening a bolt. He kept tightening it. You fix a lot of broken stuff, Travis said, making a turn and leaning on the rack near Cole now. He was establishing proximity. Cole was aware of the distance, 36 inches, give or take. It's what they pay me for, Cole said. The equipment or like, Travis gestured broadly. Everything? Like the floors, the lights, all of it? Whatever's on the work order. Huh. Travis picked up someone's spare jump rope from the rack and turned it in his hands. Must be nice. Having that kind of work. Simple, you know? Just show up, fix the thing, go home. Cole looked up from the bracket for the first time. He met Travis's eyes without expression. It's good work, he said. Travis smiled. That specific smile, the social equivalent of testing the weight of an object before throwing it. Yeah, I just mean, you don't have to think too hard, no pressure. Nobody's watching. Cole looked back at the bracket. People with the most to prove usually think other people care more than they do. The smile stayed on Travis's face but stopped reaching his eyes. That's supposed to mean something? No, Cole said. He finished the bolt, moved to the next one. Travis stood there for another 3 seconds, which was 2 seconds longer than someone who actually didn't care would have stood there. Then he walked away. Hicks followed. Cole heard him say something to Hicks. Not the words, just the tone. The slight elevation that meant he was repackaging the exchange into something that came out better for him. Cole noted it the way he'd been trained to note things, cataloged it without assigning it more weight than it warranted. Travis Kane was going to keep pushing until something stopped him. Cole understood that the way he understood equipment failure modes, not as drama, but as physics. Pressure applied to a material beyond its tolerance, predictable if you knew the properties. The question was what the stopping thing was going to be, and whether Cole could arrange for it to be anything other than him. He called Linda to check on Avery at 8:15. She ate 2 portions of the pasta and is currently lecturing me about the migratory patterns of monarch butterflies, Linda said. How's she doing on accuracy? I genuinely have no idea, but she's very confident. Cole smiled, the real one, not the maintenance version. Tell her I'll be there by 10. She'll be asleep by 9:30. I know, but tell her anyway. He hung up and looked at the gym floor from the doorway of the equipment room. Travis was on the far end running a drilling sequence with Hicks. Fast, sharp, technically good. The kid could genuinely fight. That was the frustrating part. Talent didn't inoculate you against being a problem, and sometimes it made you a worse one. Cole watched for a moment, then he went back to work. The storm was building. He couldn't stop it from arriving. But he'd spent 12 years operating in conditions where storms arrived and the work still had to get done. You breathed. You kept your hands busy. You waited for the moment when the decision became necessary and clear. And you hoped, without expectation, that it wouldn't come. It came on a Friday. The open mat sessions ran hot. More people, looser structure, the week's accumulated training energy burning off. The music was louder on Fridays. Someone had a Bluetooth speaker that got added to the room's standing speaker system, and the overlap created a sound that vibrated in Cole's back molars while he worked. He had 3 items on the work order: a loose mat section near the south wall that needed to be re-anchored, a broken hook on one of the heavy bag chains, and a shelf unit in the equipment room that had developed a lean. He'd finished 2 of them. He was crouched beside the equipment rack on the south side of the main floor, tightening a bolt on the shelf bracket, when the room changed. Not all at once. Like a tide reversing. You had to be paying attention to the water, not the shore. The grappling match on the center mat ended, and it ended wrong. Cole heard it before he looked. The quality of the reaction. A sharp, compressed sound from 20 people. Not a cheer. Not a groan. The specific acoustic signature of something that didn't go the expected direction. He looked. Travis was on his back. The visiting fighter, Cole had seen him come in earlier, didn't know him, older than the Blackridge regulars, maybe 35, nobody's idea of a physical specimen, had Travis on his back with a wrestling pin variation that wasn't flashy and wasn't complicated and was, apparently, enough. Travis tapped. The room didn't know what to do with this. There was a beat of silence that had the texture of people trying to determine if they were allowed to react. Cole read Travis's face in the moment he stood up. Not anger, not yet. Anger was the second stage. The first stage was a specific kind of fracture, the thing that happened when someone had built their entire internal architecture on a particular belief and had that belief tested in public. It looked like blankness, like the face had temporarily forgotten what expression it was supposed to make. The visiting fighter offered a hand. Travis shook it, said something short, nodded. Then he looked around the gym. Cole turned back to his work. He heard Travis's footsteps. Not a run, not even a fast walk, but purposeful, direction-oriented. He heard the energy the room was putting out in Travis's direction, the way a crowd unconsciously follows the center of mass. He was almost done with the bracket. Another minute. He heard Travis stop. Then Travis's boot connected with Cole's toolbox. The sound was enormous in the way accidents are enormous. A single sharp note that cut through the music and hung in the air while everything processed what had happened. Tools across the floor. A wrench skidding under the rack. The toolbox itself on its side, lid sprung open. Silence. Cole stayed in his crouch for 1 second. 2. Breathing through his nose the way he'd been taught to breathe in the moments before a decision arrived. Not to calm down, exactly, but to make sure the decision came from the right place, from the part of him that understood consequences. Then he began picking up the tools, one by one, methodically, without looking at Travis. The room was fully still now. The music kept going, indifferent, but nobody was moving to their own rhythms anymore. "Didn't see that there," Travis said. His voice had the specific lightness of someone who's committed to a performance. "My bad." Cole picked up the wrench from under the rack, placed it in the toolbox. "Hey," Travis said, "I'm talking to you." Cole picked up a socket head from near the mat edge. "You deaf?" Someone near the water fountain shifted their weight. It was audible. Travis stepped forward and crouched to eye level with Cole, who was still gathering tools from the floor. It was the crouch of someone who'd decided that the person in front of them wasn't going to do anything. "Must be weird," Travis said, almost conversational. "Coming in here every night, everyone training, getting better, doing something, and you're just, what, picking up after us?" Cole set the last tool in the box and stood up. He was 3 inches shorter than Travis and weighed maybe 15 pounds less, though it was harder to tell than it should have been. In the gray t-shirt and worn jeans, he didn't look like a fighter. He didn't have a fighter's conspicuous physicality, the thick neck, the cauliflower ears, the walking with my shoulders out posture. He just stood there. "You must make what?" Travis continued, warming to it now, working the audience he could feel but wasn't looking at. $12, $13 an hour for this? Cole said nothing. Nothing. "Or is it less? Gig work? Or—" "Travis." One word, not loud. Not a warning in the way that contained a threat. Just his name, spoken with the same register someone used when they decided to have a conversation and were identifying who the conversation was with. Travis stopped. "I'm going to ask you once to let this go," Cole said, "and then I'm going to go back to work, because I have to be home by 10. "Home?" Travis looked at him. "Right, He made a gesture that was loose, dismissive, the gesture of a man reaching for the sharpest thing available. The single dad thing. "You raised that kid by yourself, right? No mother in the picture?" Cole's jaw moved. Almost nothing. A fraction of motion in the muscle below his ear. "That's what I heard," Travis said. "Makes sense. Takes a real—" "Walk away, Travis." Flat, clean, no decoration. Something in the room changed again. The people who'd been watching with amusement had stopped being amused. They weren't sure what they were watching now. Travis smiled, but it was the kind of smile that was covering something. "Or what?" Cole didn't answer, which was worse than answering. Travis reached forward and shoved him in the shoulder. Not a massive shove, calibrated, enough to move a regular person, establish dominance, demonstrate the power differential in front of witnesses without technically starting a fight. Cole moved maybe 2 inches. The expression on Travis's face shifted, barely, just a flicker of something that wasn't the script he'd been following. He shoved again, harder. Cole moved the same 2 inches. Travis's jaw tightened. The crowd was watching. He'd started this. He needed it to land the way he'd intended. He grabbed Cole's wrist, both hands, combat grip, leverage established, and wrenched downward and sideways with his full body weight, the kind of off-balance takedown that would have put most people on the floor in a tangle of their own limbs. For exactly 1 second, one precise second, Cole looked like a man about to go down. And then he didn't. His weight didn't shift the way it should have. His base didn't break. Travis pulled and nothing came with him, and the sudden absence of the expected resistance sent a message through Travis's hands and up his arms and into his brain that arrived as a single clarifying thought. This is wrong. Then Cole's stance changed. It wasn't dramatic. No shuffling of feet, no dropping into a fighting posture. Just a subtle, nearly invisible redistribution. Weight lower, shoulders centered, something in the geometry of his body reorganizing itself into an arrangement that had nothing to do with maintenance work. Travis looked at Cole's face and understood, somewhere pre-verbal, in the place where the animal part of human thinking still operates, that he had made a significant mistake. The gym held its breath. Cole moved. They would all describe it differently afterward. Reyes would say it looked like Travis got redirected, like his own momentum was simply sent somewhere Cole chose instead of where Travis intended. Chen would say she missed it. She was watching, and she still missed the actual moment of transition. Marcus Vale, who had come back through the side door 30 seconds earlier and was standing near the equipment room watching, would not describe it at all. He would just nod slowly, the way someone nods when a calculation they'd been running in the back of their mind finally resolves to a number they'd been expecting. Darnell, sitting near the wall where he'd been watching the open mat, the small cut on his lip still healing, would say that 1 second Travis was pulling and the next second Travis was on the mat, and that the part in between had happened in the space between blinks. That was the most accurate account. Travis hit the mat with a sound that was less like a crash and more like a fact being stated. The impact was real. Cole hadn't cushioned it, hadn't sent him down gently. But it also wasn't a throw designed to hurt. The angle, the height, the point of contact, controlled, purposeful. The difference between someone who fought with anger and someone who fought with information. Travis tried to get up immediately, the way fighters do, the automatic response to going down. Cole was already adjusting his position. Not standing over him, not posturing, just there. In the space Travis was moving into, with the kind of unhurried precision that communicated, without any words, that getting up was not the next available option unless Cole allowed it. Travis's attempt stalled. His face was pressed at an angle where he could see Cole's boot, the mat seam, and the legs of the fighters standing at the edge of the circle that had formed without anyone deciding to form it. Every person in the room was standing still. "Enough," Cole said. The word dropped into the silence like a key into a lock. Travis stopped. It wasn't submission in the dramatic sense. It wasn't defeat performed for an audience. It was the specific stillness of a person who has received information that overrides their programming, who has encountered something they can't process in the usual way and needs a moment to recalibrate. Cole held the position for one breath. Then he released and stepped back. Not fast, not slow. The way you step back when something is finished. Travis got to his knees, then his feet. He didn't look at anyone. His chest was moving faster than normal, and his jaw was set in the way that was either anger or the effort not to show something else. He looked at Cole. "What the hell are you?" The room waited. Cole picked up his toolbox from the floor where it had been knocked. "A father," he said, "who has to get home to his daughter." He walked toward the exit. Behind him, 30 fighters stood in the kind of silence that comes after something has fundamentally changed, and nobody's had time to understand exactly what. At the side door, Marcus Vale was watching Cole cross the floor. And his expression, the expression of a man who had spent his adult life reading situations the way other people read menus, said that he had not been surprised, that he had in fact been waiting. He took one step forward. Cole. Cole slowed. Didn't stop completely. His hand was already on the door bar. "Tomorrow," Marcus said, "when you come in, we're going to talk." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a threat. It was a man telling another man that a door they'd both been pretending wasn't there had just opened, and they were going to have to decide together what was on the other side. Cole pushed the bar. Cold air hit him in the face. The parking lot spread out under the amber security light, rain moving sideways through the beam, his truck at the far end of the row where he always parked. habits of positioning, old and automatic. He stood there for a moment. The gym door swung shut behind him, and through it, muffled, he could hear the voices starting up, the sound of 30 people beginning to process what they'd witnessed. Cole walked to his truck. He had to call Linda. He had to make sure Avery was asleep. He had to drive 11 minutes through the rain and carry his daughter to bed if she drifted off on Linda's couch. And in the morning, she'd want to show him whatever she'd been painting, and he'd sit at the kitchen table with his coffee and look at a fox in a Renaissance council chamber or a badger in a Victorian library, and it would be the best part of his week. He started the engine, sat in the rain for a moment before pulling out. In 12 years of high-risk operations, he had never once wished his past would stay quiet. He'd assumed it. And tonight, for the first time in longer than he wanted to calculate, he wasn't sure that assumption still held. The rain was still coming down when Cole pulled into Linda's parking lot. He sat in the truck for a minute before going up. Not long, just enough to let the evening settle into something he could carry without it showing. He'd learned that skill the same place he'd learned most things, through repetition in conditions that didn't allow for the alternative. He checked his phone. One text from Linda, sent 40 minutes ago. She's out. Ate 3 cookies after the pasta. Don't tell her I told you. Cole typed back, "Thank you." Then added, "For everything." He pocketed the phone, got out of the truck, and stood in the rain for a second longer than necessary, feeling it on his face, on his forearms, the particular cold of October rain that had enough weight to it that you couldn't pretend it wasn't there. Then he went upstairs. Linda opened the door before he knocked. She had the specific radar of a woman who had raised 4 children and was constitutionally incapable of sleeping until everyone was accounted for. "She's on the couch," Linda said, stepping back. She was in her robe, reading glasses pushed up on her head. She looked at Cole the way she'd been looking at him lately, that careful, sideways attention that meant she'd noticed something and was deciding whether to name it. "Long night?" she said. "Normal night." "You've got—" She gestured at his forearm. A small scrape, probably from the floor when he'd gone down to gather the tools. He hadn't noticed it. "Bracket repair," he said. Linda held his gaze for one more beat, then let it go. That was one of the things Cole valued about her. She'd ask once, and if the answer was incomplete, she'd file it and move on. No performance of concern. Avery was on the couch in her jacket, one shoe on and one shoe off, head tilted at the angle that suggested she'd fallen asleep mid-resistance. She was holding a small sketchbook against her chest. She'd started carrying one after the art program teacher told her to draw whatever she noticed during the day, and Avery had taken this instruction with the literal commitment she brought to everything. Cole picked her up without waking her. She was getting heavier, that slow, steady weight accumulation of a kid growing in real time. And she made a sound against his shoulder that was almost a word, and then wasn't. "Daddy," she said. Asleep, pure reflex. "Yeah," he said, quietly. "I'm here." He carried her down to the truck, buckled her in the back, drove the 4 blocks home, carried her up the stairs, got her shoes off without waking her. She'd sleep in the jacket tonight, which she did sometimes, and in the morning she'd be indignant about it in the specific way she was indignant about things she couldn't argue were his fault. He sat on the edge of her bed for a moment after he got her settled. The room was dark except for the streetlight coming through the gap in the curtain, and it fell across the foot of her bed in an orange stripe. He watched her breathe, that reliable, undramatic rhythm, until his own breathing matched it. Then he went to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, and stood at the counter drinking it while the radiator ticked. He thought about Marcus's face at the door. "Tomorrow. We're going to talk." Cole finished the water, rinsed the glass, and went to bed. He slept, which surprised him slightly. Not well. He rarely slept well, but solidly enough. Whatever the night had cost him, his body had decided it was paid. I was up at 5:15. 4 miles in the dark, the streets wet and quiet, the orange streetlights reflecting in the puddles left by last night's rain. He ran the same route he always ran, not out of inflexibility, but because familiarity meant his attention could be elsewhere. He didn't run with music. He ran with whatever was in his head, and he'd learned over a long time that the best strategy for managing what was in his head was to let it sort itself out while his legs did the work. What sorted out by the time he got back to his building was this: Last night had happened, it was done, and the question wasn't whether it was going to have consequences, but what shape those consequences were going to take, and whether he had any real influence over them. Avery was up when he came back, still in the jacket, making toast with the focused intensity she brought to all kitchen operations. She had her sketchbook open on the counter beside the toaster, a pencil behind her ear. "You came in late," she said, without turning around. "Little after 10. Linda said you were fixing stuff." "I was." "Did you fix it?" Cole poured water into the coffee maker. "Most of it." She turned then and looked at him with the specific expression, chin slightly up, eyes steady, that was entirely her mother's and never failed to do something complicated to his chest. "You have a scrape. Bracket job. Floor was rough." She considered this. "Does it hurt?" "No." "Okay." She turned back to the toast. "I drew a hummingbird in a spacesuit yesterday. Mrs. Ortega said it was imaginatively rendered." "That's a good note." "I think it means weird." "It means she noticed it." Avery pulled the toast up and examined it. "Is being noticed good?" Cole poured his coffee. Thought about Travis's boot connecting with his toolbox. Thought about 30 fighters going still. "Depends on the situation," he said. She accepted this with the equanimity of a kid who'd learned that some of her father's answers were complete, and some of them were edges of larger things she wasn't old enough for yet. She put peanut butter on her toast and went to the table and opened the sketchbook and started drawing without another word, which was as comfortable as silence got. Cole drank his coffee standing at the counter and watched her draw and tried not to think about what Marcus was going to say. Honey got to Blackridge at 8 that night. Marcus was already there, which was expected. What wasn't expected was that the main floor was empty. No regular training, no open mat. The lights were on, but the building had the specific vacancy of a space that should have people in it. Marcus was sitting on the equipment table near the center of the floor. Not behind it, not at his desk. On it, an old coffee mug next to him. He was looking at the far wall when Cole came in, and he didn't turn immediately. Cole set his toolbox down by the door. "You cleared the schedule," Cole said. "Called it a maintenance night." Marcus looked at him then. "Which it is." Cole pulled a stool out from under the equipment table and sat on it. He could have stayed standing. He didn't, because sitting was a choice that said he wasn't in a hurry to leave, and he wanted Marcus to have that information. "Travis isn't here," Marcus said. "I noticed." "I talked to him this morning." Marcus wrapped both hands around the coffee mug. "He's not injured, couple of bruises. His ego's the main casualty." Cole said nothing. "He knows what he did was wrong," Marcus said. "Not just to you, Darnell, the others. He's known for a while, I think. He's just not been in a situation where the usual," he looked for the word, "architecture didn't hold." "The architecture being that nobody pushed back." "Yeah." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's about right." They sat with that for a moment. Outside, a car went past with its radio up. "I want to ask you something," Marcus said, "and I want you to know I'm not asking so I can do anything with it. I'm asking because I've been watching you for 3 months, and I've been a certain kind of wrong about you, and I'd like to understand how wrong." Cole looked at him. "Where did you train?" Marcus said. The question was specific enough that a general answer wasn't going to satisfy it, and they both knew it. Marcus wasn't asking about gyms or instructors. He was asking about the particular vocabulary of movement Cole had used last night, the weight distribution, the leverage, the economy, the way a linguist asks where someone learned a language by asking where they grew up. Cole set his forearms on his knees, looked at the mat. "That's a complicated question," he said. "I know. Because the training I got wasn't the kind you put in an answer when someone asks." "I know that too." Marcus paused. "I did contract 2 years overseas, private sector. Before that, 8 years with the 75th. He said it flat, without decoration. Just information, offered as a credential for the conversation. "I know how people move when they've been trained in certain places. I've been watching you pick up tools and fix brackets for 3 months and thinking that isn't everything. Last night confirmed it." Cole was quiet for a long moment. The radiator in the equipment room clicked twice. "I was in for 12 years, Cole said. Naval Special Warfare." Marcus absorbed this without changing his expression. "SEAL?" "Yeah." "What teams?" 3. Then 7. Deployment rotations. Middle East, Africa, one detachment in Central America that Cole stopped. That I can't go into. I'm not asking you to. I know. Cole looked at the mat again. I got out 4 years ago, after my wife died. Avery needed me somewhere specific, not deployed, not on standby, somewhere she could find me. Marcus nodded. Not in the performative way of someone processing an emotional disclosure, but in the way of a man who understood operational necessity applied to more than operations. What was it? Marcus asked. The thing that made you finally not re-enlist? Cole thought about how to answer this. There was a long version and a short version and a true version that didn't map perfectly onto either. She was 8 months old, he said. Avery. I was on a rotation, communication blackout for 17 days. When I came back, her mother had been in the hospital for 6 of those days, with a complication nobody had predicted, and Avery was with her sister, and none of them could reach me because that's how the job worked. He paused. Her mother recovered, but I'd missed 6 days of a crisis I didn't know was happening. And I thought about the version where she didn't recover, and where I got a notification through a casualty affairs officer while I was in a safe house somewhere being told what I couldn't tell you the location of. He stopped again. I put in my papers after the rotation was finished. The room was very quiet. Then she died anyway, Marcus said. Not cruel, just accurate. Yeah, Cole's voice was level. It had to be. He'd had 4 years of practice. 18 months after I got out, car accident. Nothing. There was nothing medical or dramatic about it. Just a Tuesday. He looked at his hands. She'd just started saying I could take more of Avery's time while she got her career reestablished. We were in the middle of working out a revised custody schedule, and then it was Tuesday. Marcus didn't say anything for a moment. I was the kind of man who understood that there was nothing to say to that particular specific kind of information, and that saying nothing was more respectful than filling the space. So, Marcus finally said, now you fix equipment at a gym at night so your daughter can take art classes. That's about right. And you've been carrying 12 years of specialized training in your back pocket and not using it. I'm using it, Cole said. Just not here. Not the way it looks. Marcus tilted his head slightly. I notice things, Cole said. I'm always noticing things. That's not a choice anymore. It's the baseline. Exits, positions, dynamics. Who's in the room? What's the room doing? I catalog it, but I do the maintenance work. He glanced at Marcus. I do the job. You also stepped in for Darnell. I wasn't making a decision about Travis. I was talking to the kid. You were making a decision about Travis, Marcus said, not unkindly. You just weren't making it consciously. You stepped in because you couldn't not. And Travis felt it. Men like that. They always feel it when someone isn't impressed. It drives them crazy. And so, he gestured vaguely. Friday. Cole didn't argue with this. It was accurate. Here's what I want to tell you, Marcus said. He set down the coffee mug. I've been running this gym for 8 years, and the thing I've been fighting the whole time is the idea that being the hardest person in a room is what makes you worth something. Travis is the worst version of it, but it's everywhere. He looked at Cole. I've got 16 fighters in this gym between 18 and 25 who are watching what happened Friday and trying to understand what they saw. I've got kids who come in on Saturday mornings who are 10, 11 years old, learning what strength means. Cole was watching him. I want you to teach a class, Marcus said. Fundamentals. Whatever you think is worth teaching. I don't care about the technique. You can decide that. I care about... He paused, finding the words. I care about what you did when you put Travis on the mat and then just stepped back. No showboating, no audience. You said enough and you stepped back. I want whoever you are when you do that to be in this building in a structured way. Cole looked at him for a long moment. I'm a maintenance worker, he said. You're also someone who can teach. I don't know if I want to be identified. I'm not asking you to put your service record on the wall, Marcus said. I'm asking you to come in on Thursday evenings and work with beginners for an hour. You decide what you tell them. You decide who you are to them. But you'd be good at it, Cole. I've been watching you long enough to know that. Cole stood up from the stool, not leaving, just moving, the way he did when he was processing. He walked to the center mat and looked at it, the space where it had happened. The mat looked the same as it always did. No evidence. just rubber and chalk marks and the slight worn spot near the center from years of footwork. What did Travis say? Cole asked. When you talked to him? He said he didn't expect... Marcus paused. He said it was like trying to move something that had decided not to be moved. Cole looked at the worn spot on the mat. He was right, Cole said. That's exactly what it was. There was a beat. I'll think about the class, he said. That's enough for now. Cole picked up his toolbox. The work order for tonight was on the table. 3 items. Standard. He started toward the equipment room. One more thing, Marcus said. Cole stopped. The shelf unit in the equipment room, the lean. I've got it on the list. The feet on the left side have been stripped since July. I kept meaning to get to it. I'll re-anchor into the studs. Marcus nodded. Good. That was it. No ceremony. Cole went to work. He spent the next 2 hours on the equipment room shelf, the broken hook on the heavy bag chain, and a water pressure issue in the locker room that wasn't on the work order but that he'd noticed 2 weeks ago and finally had enough time to address. The building was quiet around him. The empty gym had a different acoustic quality than the full one. You could hear the building itself, its creaks and settlings, the ventilation system cycling, the distant traffic on the cross street. He worked steadily, the same way he'd always worked. Around 10, he was re-anchoring the final bracket on the shelf unit when he heard the gym door. He didn't stop working. He noted the sound. Single set of footsteps, heavier than Marcus's. The specific cadence of someone moving with intentionality, but not in a hurry, and continued with the bracket. The footsteps stopped at the equipment room doorway. Cole finished the bracket, checked its stability with a firm pull, and then turned. Travis Kane stood in his doorway. He wasn't in his training clothes. He had jeans on, a plain sweatshirt, hands in his pockets. He looked different without the audience. Younger, somehow. The particular kind of younger that happened when someone's performance framework got removed and what was left was the actual person underneath it. He had a bruise along his left jaw that he probably didn't realize was visible under the fluorescent light. Cole set down the wrench. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Marcus said you'd be here, Travis said finally. Marcus was right. Travis looked at the floor, then back up. I wanted to... He stopped. Started again. I'm not here to start anything. I can see that. I wanted to, Friday was... He stopped again, jaw working slightly. This clearly wasn't coming easy, and Cole gave him the room to find it without filling the space. I behaved like an idiot. To you, and before that to the kid, Darnell, and to other people. He said it looking at Cole, which took something. I know saying that doesn't... Why? Cole said. Travis blinked. What? Why did you do it? Not the apology. Why did you do what you did? Travis looked like he'd been prepared for several possible responses, and that wasn't one of them. He moved his jaw slightly. Thought. I don't know exactly, he said, and the fact that it wasn't a prepared answer was what made it worth something. Yes, you do, Cole said. Not harshly. Think past the first answer. Travis looked at the floor, at the shelf unit, at Cole. Because I was losing, he said. The round. With that guy. And I needed to feel like something was still where I put it, still lower than me. He said the last part quietly, like he was hearing it clearly for the first time by saying it out loud. That's a bad reason. It is, Cole said. But it's an honest one. Travis looked at him. I didn't know. I know. If I'd known, it wouldn't have changed the wrong part, Cole said. What you did was wrong before I did anything about it. Not wrong because I turned out to be someone who could stop you. Wrong because the kid on the mat couldn't. Travis absorbed that. Yeah, he said, quietly. Yeah, I know that. The fluorescent light buzzed faintly overhead. Somewhere in the main gym, the ventilation system clicked through a cycle. I'll talk to Darnell, Travis said. Directly. If he's still coming in. He was here Wednesday, Cole said. Ask Reyes. Reyes has been working with him on his base. Travis nodded. Okay. He looked at Cole with an expression that wanted to ask something and wasn't sure if it was allowed. Cole waited. That thing you did, Travis said. The way you moved. He stopped. I've trained for 9 years. I know what I'm doing. And it was like there was no, he couldn't quite find the word. Like physics wasn't working the way it should. Like I was pushing on a wall. Cole was quiet for a moment. That's what happens, Cole said, when someone stops trying to win and starts trying to make you stop. He picked up the wrench and set it in the toolbox. When you train to dominate, you're always responding to the performance. When you train to neutralize, you stop caring about the performance. He looked at Travis. You were putting on a show. I wasn't watching the show. Travis stood in the doorway processing this. Could you teach that? He said. Cole looked at him. Not me specifically, Travis said. I mean, I know I'm not in a position to ask you for anything right now. I mean, Marcus mentioned a class, fundamentals. I heard him on the phone this morning when I came in. He paused. The younger guys here, they watch me. I know they do. And I've been teaching them the wrong thing without knowing I was teaching. He looked at the floor. I'm not asking you to fix that. If there's a class, I'll make sure none of the guys I work with gives you a problem about it. Cole studied him for a moment. Go talk to Darnell, he said. That's where it starts. Not with me. Travis nodded, straightened. Thank you for, he started. Go home, Travis. Not unkind, just complete. Travis left. His footsteps went across the main floor and the gym door opened and closed, and then it was quiet again. Cole stood in the equipment room with his toolbox and the newly re-anchored shelf and the buzzing fluorescent light. He ran his hand along the shelf to confirm the stability, firm, solid, properly seated, and nodded to himself. He started gathering his tools. His phone buzzed. Linda. Forgot to mention, Avery left her good-colored pencils here. I'll bring them tomorrow. He typed back. No rush. She'll panic tomorrow morning, though. Linda. I know. I already told her where they are. Cole smiled. Pocketed the phone. He did one last walkthrough of the equipment room, the locker room, the main floor. The habitual check of a man who didn't leave spaces without confirming them. Everything where it should be, everything stable. He shouldered his bag. At the door he stopped. He looked back at the main floor, the mats, the bags, the mirrors reflecting the empty space, the worn spot at the center from years of footwork going in circles. He thought about the class Marcus had offered. Thursday evenings. An hour with beginners. He thought about what he'd said to Darnell the night it started. Fast is information. That feeling's worth remembering. I thought about Avery in the back seat of his truck, asleep with her sketchbook against her chest, drawing hummingbirds in spacesuits. He thought about the red fox in the Renaissance council chamber, taped to the refrigerator door. He thought about 12 years of training that lived in his body like a second skeleton, always there, usually quiet, never gone. He turned off the lights, stepped outside into an October night that had gotten colder, the wet pavement reflecting the amber of the parking lot lamp. His truck at the far end where he always parked. He drove home. Upstairs, he checked Avery's room from the doorway. The stripe of light across her bed, the steady breathing, the sketchbook open on the floor beside her where she'd apparently been drawing before she fell asleep. He picked it up without waking her. In the kitchen light, he looked at the page. A small figure, standing alone in the center of what was clearly meant to be a large room. The figure was drawn in the simple, confident lines Avery had developed. No face, just a shape. But around it she'd drawn other figures, all of them taller, all of them turned toward the small one. And from the small figure, she'd drawn lines going outward. She hadn't labeled them. Cole stood at the kitchen table for a long time, looking at the drawing. Then he set it carefully on the counter, turned off the light, and went to bed. He'd give Marcus his answer about the class in the morning. He already knew what it was. He gave Marcus the answer the next morning, texted it at 6:42, standing in the kitchen while the coffee brewed and Avery was in the shower singing something that had a melody he didn't recognize but that she performed with absolute conviction. Thursday evenings. I'll do it. Marcus replied 11 minutes later. Good. 6 o'clock. Bring whoever you are when you're not pretending to be a maintenance worker. Cole read that twice. Put the phone face down on the counter. Poured his coffee. Avery came out of the bathroom in her school clothes with her hair still dripping and a look on her face that meant she remembered something. My pencils. At Linda's. She knows. I need the burnt sienna specifically. For what? I'm doing a deer at a piano recital, and the coat color matters. Cole handed her a dish towel for her hair. I'll get them from Linda tonight. She took the towel and started rubbing her hair in the aggressive, indifferent way that suggested she considered drying it a bureaucratic inconvenience rather than an actual task. Are you going to the gym tonight? Yeah. What are you fixing tonight? He thought about it. Some things I noticed last week that weren't on the list. She looked at him over the towel. Is that allowed? Marcus trusts me to use my judgment. She nodded, apparently satisfied with this. The logic of professional autonomy made sense to her. She had opinions about her own professional autonomy regarding the art program curriculum and expressed them to Mrs. Ortega with a regularity that Mrs. Ortega had described to Cole at the last parent meeting as unusually principled for a 9-year-old. He dropped her at school at 7:50. She was out of the truck and 3 steps toward the entrance before she turned back and knocked on the window. He rolled it down. "The deer," she said. "At the piano. Is that a weird thing to draw?" "No." Mrs. Ortega might say it's too busy. Tell her the complexity serves the composition. Avery considered this. Does it? I don't know. But say it with confidence and see what happens. She almost smiled, then turned and went inside. Cole drove to Hayward Manufacturing and worked a full shift and didn't think about Thursday for most of it, which was a reasonable outcome given that the hydraulic press on line 4 developed a seal issue at 9 in the morning that required his complete attention until nearly 2 in the afternoon. He thought about it on the drive home. He thought about what you taught people who were beginning. Not the techniques. Those were just vocabulary. The question was what language you were teaching them to think in. The difference between training someone to win and training someone to be effective was substantial, and most people who taught the first never realized they weren't teaching the second. He'd had instructors who understood the difference. One in particular, a man named Ortiz, Naval Special Warfare training cadre, who had the physical presence of someone assembled specifically for the purpose and the teaching instinct of a man who understood that violence was a last resort only if you genuinely prepared every other resort that came before it. Ortiz used to say, "The objective is never the fight. The fight is what happens when everything else runs out. So you'd better have a lot of things to run out of first." Cole had carried that sentence for 15 years. He'd never found a reason to put it down. Well, Thursday arrived. 6 beginners showed up for the fundamentals class. Marcus had put a handwritten sign on the board by the entrance. Thursday, 6 p.m., fundamentals. Cole Maddox, instructor. No other description. Cole had asked him to keep it minimal, and Marcus had complied without asking why. The 6 people who showed up were Darnell, who Cole had expected, a woman in her late 20s named Petra, who worked hospital shifts and had told Marcus she wanted to know how to defend herself without specifying from what. 2 brothers named Ruiz, Diego, 17, and Marco, 15, who Marcus had been letting train at reduced rate since their father brought them in 6 months ago. A 40-year-old plumber named Stan, who had the build of a man who'd worked physically his whole life and the movement economy of someone who'd never been trained, and a 16-year-old girl named Yolanda, who'd been watching the adult classes from the doorway for 2 weeks before Marcus finally came over and asked her what she was waiting for. Cole looked at them assembled on the mat and felt something he hadn't expected. Not nerves. He'd stood in front of situations that were genuinely threatening, and nerves were a calibrated response to actual threat, not to 6 people waiting to learn something. What he felt was more like weight, the specific weight of responsibility for what these 6 people were going to carry away from this hour. He didn't do a long introduction. "My name's Cole. Most of you have seen me around doing maintenance work, which is also what I do here, so nothing about that changes. This is an additional thing." He looked at each of them briefly. Not performing the look, just actually looking, the way he did everything. "I'm going to tell you one thing at the start, and I want you to remember it when everything else gets confusing, because it will get confusing. Ready?" They were quiet, attentive in different ways. Darnell's was earnest, Petra's was careful, Stan's was the slightly skeptical attention of a man who'd spent 40 years learning things the hard way and had opinions about instruction. "Awareness is the first technique," Cole said. "Not stance, not how to throw something. Awareness. Knowing where you are, who's around you, what's changing. Everything else we do in this room is what you use after awareness has already told you something is wrong. If your awareness is working, you rarely need the rest of it." He paused. "Questions so far?" Stan raised a hand. So we're starting with philosophy? We're starting with what works, Cole said. If that sounds like philosophy, give it 6 months and see how it sounds then. Stan dropped the hand. Something in his expression shifted. Not convinced yet, but interested. Cole ran them for 55 minutes. He didn't touch anything resembling what he'd done to Travis, though. No throws, no leverage work, nothing that required a trust level they hadn't built yet. He ran them through posture, through the basic mathematics of balance, through how to move in a space without creating gaps in your own position. He had them walk toward the wall and stop and notice where their weight was. He had them pair up and put one hand on each other's shoulders and try to feel where the other person's weight was going before they moved. Darnell, to his credit, was the first one to understand what that drill was actually for. It's like reading, he said. You're feeling what's about to happen. Before it happens, Cole said. And once you can feel the before, you've got options. Once it's happening, your options are already narrowed. He looked at the group. This is what I mean by awareness. Not just visual. Everything. Yolanda had been quiet the whole session. She was technically the least physically prepared person in the room. Small, light, the kind of frame that in most combat sports conversations got described as a limitation before someone bothered to think about it differently. But she'd been the most consistent at the balance drill. She'd felt things the two Ruiz brothers, who were both bigger and more athletic, were still missing. Cole noted it without commenting on it directly. He'd come back to it. At the end of the hour, he didn't give a speech. He said, "Same time next week. Between now and then, walk into every room you enter, and before you do anything else, know where the exits are." "That's it?" Marco Ruiz said. "That's enough for this week," Cole said. Well, the class ran for 6 weeks before the thing with Garza happened. In those 6 weeks, Marcus quietly let it be known among the regular Blackridge fighters that the Thursday fundamentals class was Cole's space and the climate in it needed to reflect that. This produced some eye-rolling from a few of the older regulars and zero pushback from Travis, who had started arriving early on Thursdays and leaving before 6, which Cole recognized as a form of respect that Travis didn't know how to offer directly yet, and so was offering through geography. Cole's class grew. By week 4, it was 11 people. By week 6, it was 16, which was too many for the format he'd been using, so he adjusted. He started working in smaller rotating groups, 4 or 5 at a time on specific drills, while the others practiced what they'd been given. It meant he was moving constantly, watching multiple things, correcting and noting and adjusting. It suited him. He realized, better at this than he'd expected. Not because he had a gift for instruction in some innate sense, but because he genuinely paid attention to the specific person in front of him, what their body defaulted to, where their mind went when they were under mild pressure, what they thought they were doing versus what they were actually doing. He'd been trained to read people by people who needed to read them for survival, and it turned out reading a beginner trying to understand weight distribution wasn't categorically different from reading a room. It was just quieter stakes. Darnell was improving faster than anyone else. He still had gaps, but he'd stopped flinching when someone moved toward him, which had been his main tell in the early sessions. A slight backward lean, a tensing, the body saying incoming before the mind could say, wait and see. Cole had spent 2 sessions specifically on that, not by drilling it out of him, but by putting him in situations where the flinch was the wrong answer often enough that his nervous system started asking the question before defaulting to the response. Yolanda had started asking questions at the end of each session. Specific questions, not how do I do this, but why does this work? Cole answered them directly, without simplifying, and she absorbed the answers with the focused quiet of someone who was building an internal model, not just a set of moves. "You were in the military," she said one Thursday after everyone else had left, while Cole was coiling the resistance bands. He looked at her. "I'm not asking you to confirm it," she said. "I'm just saying that's what the way you explain things sounds like. Like you're teaching us things that actually mattered somewhere." Cole finished coiling the band. "Why does that matter to you?" "Because I want to know if this is real or if it's gym stuff." "What's the difference?" "Gym stuff is for in here," she said. "I'm not worried about in here." Cole set the band in the bin. "Where are you worried about?" She looked at the floor. Not evasively. She was choosing. "My neighborhood. My walk to the bus." Cole nodded slowly. "Then let me tell you something. The things I'm teaching you work in your neighborhood and on your walk to the bus. The principles don't change with the location. He looked at her. But the most important thing I'm teaching you, the awareness, the knowing who's in the space, that's not something you turn on when you feel threatened. That's something you run all the time, quietly, so you know what normal looks like before anything changes. So you know the difference, she said. So you have time, he said. Time is the thing. Everything else is what you use when time runs out. She nodded, picked up her bag. At the door, she stopped. Thank you, she said. Not formally, just directly. See you Thursday, Cole said. Ramon Garza had been coming to Blackridge for 3 months, overlapping almost exactly with Cole's maintenance work there, though their paths hadn't crossed in any significant way. He was 31, trained in the competitive circuit, had a regional record that Marcus had described to Cole once as technically impressive and temperamentally concerning, which turned out to be an efficient summary. Garza was not Travis. Travis had the particular damage of someone who needed an audience. His cruelty was performative, which meant it had limits, and those limits were the place where Travis had gradually started to change. Garza was different. He was quiet about it, which was worse. He trained hard, said little, and had a way of making certain fighters at Blackridge feel small that didn't require an audience and left no obvious evidence. Cole had been watching him for 5 weeks. Not constantly, not even primarily. But when you were in a room, you noted things. And what Cole had noted about Garza was a pattern of behavior that the word bullying didn't quite cover. It was more like deliberate erosion, small cuts, timed comments. The precise application of contempt in doses small enough that each individual incident was dismissible. The targets were consistent. The beginners from Cole's class. This was the part Cole was still working out how to address when Thursday of the 7th week arrived and addressed it for him. The fundamentals class ran its hour. Cole was working the Ruiz brothers on a takedown defense drill, Marco on defense, Diego applying controlled pressure, Cole watching Marco's base, when he heard the sound from the other side of the room. Not a loud sound. That was the thing about Garza. He didn't make loud sounds. Cole looked. Garza had come off his own drilling session early and was standing near the edge of the mat closest to where Darnell had left his gear bag. Garza had picked something up from the bag. A notebook, small, the one Darnell had been using to take notes after each class, which Cole had privately considered one of the better instincts he'd seen from a beginner. "What is this?" Garza said. It wasn't a question. Darnell was 6 feet away. He'd seen Garza pick it up and was standing with the particular stillness of someone deciding how much this moment was going to cost them. "My notebook," Darnell said. "You taking notes?" Garza opened it, read something. His expression didn't change. "For a gym class." "Can I have it back?" Garza turned a page. "Awareness is the first technique." He said it in a voice that was almost admiring. Almost. Except that the quality underneath it was the specific register of someone who understood that mockery was most effective when it was quiet. "That's what he's teaching you." Garza. Cole was across the floor. He hadn't run. He'd moved at the pace of a man who had decided to be somewhere and was getting there, direct, unhurried, which was somehow more clarifying than urgency would have been. Several people on the main floor had stopped what they were doing. Garza looked up. He registered Cole's approach without changing his expression. He also registered the room stopping, and unlike Travis, this didn't seem to matter to him particularly. "Good class?" Garza said. Cole stopped 4 feet away. The specific distance. "Give him the notebook." Garza held his gaze for a beat that was 1 beat longer than someone unconcerned would have held it. Then he held the notebook out toward Darnell, not handed it, held it out, and let it drop the last 2 inches. A small thing, precisely calculated to communicate something without being actionable. Darnell picked it up. Cole didn't look at Darnell. He kept his eyes on Garza. "You're done for tonight." Garza's jaw shifted slightly. "Excuse me?" "You're done training. Go home." "I've got another 40 minutes on my—" "You're done," Cole said. The room had gone the same quality of still it had gone 6 weeks ago, but this was different. That night had been Travis's performance. Large, loud, designed to be witnessed. This was 2 men standing close together saying things with precise voices and neither of them raising the volume, which the room seemed to understand was its own category of serious. Garza looked at Cole with an expression that was evaluating. He was doing the arithmetic. Who Cole was, what had happened with Travis. what the room was doing, what response was available to him that preserved what he wanted preserved. You don't run this gym, Garza said. Marcus does, Cole said. You want to have this conversation with him? He's in the back office. I'll train where Garza. Cole's voice didn't rise. It did something else. It simplified. Like a room where someone had just turned off all the unnecessary lights, leaving only what was needed to see clearly. I'm not asking. The temperature in that sentence was the thing. Not threat. Cole wasn't threatening him. It was more like a door being described. This is the door. There it is. That's where this goes if you keep going. The specificity of a man who had been through enough actual doors that describing them was easy. Garza held the look for another 3 seconds. Then he picked up his towel from the mat, rolled it, tucked it under his arm with the deliberateness of a man taking his time to make a point about whose timeline this was. He walked to the exit. At the door, he turned back and looked at Darnell. Good luck with your notebook, he said. Then he was gone. The gym held its collective breath for a moment. Then, by gradual degrees, the ambient sound started coming back. Gloves on bags, the creak of the speed rope, someone resetting their phone timer. Cole turned to Darnell. You good? Darnell was looking at the door Garza had left through. He looked back at Cole. Something in his face had settled. Not quite relief, which would have been too simple for what it was. More like a rearrangement. Like something that had been stored in the wrong place had been moved somewhere that made more sense. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I'm good. Cole looked at the notebook in Darnell's hand. Your notes any good? Darnell almost laughed. I think so. Bring them Thursday. We'll go over them. He left Darnell there and went to the back office. Marcus was in the doorway. He'd come out at some point, Cole hadn't noticed exactly when, and was standing with his arms crossed, one shoulder against the doorframe. He had the expression of a man who had been watching an equation reach its solution. Garza's going to be a problem, Cole said. Garza's already a problem, Marcus said. I've been aware of it. I didn't have the right framework to deal with it. He targets people who won't push back. I know. That's a different profile than Travis. Marcus nodded. Travis was ego. This is something more, he paused, more deliberate. Cole thought about the notebook, the 2-inch drop, the precision of it. I want to talk to him, Cole said. Formally. You and me and him, in here. I want to make clear what the expectations are at this gym and what the consequences are if they're not met. He might not accept that from you. He doesn't have to accept it from me, Cole said. He has to accept it from you. I'm just there because I'm the one who saw it consistently enough to name the pattern. Marcus studied him. You've been watching him a while. 5 weeks. You didn't say anything. I was still building the picture, Cole said. I don't report incomplete information. Marcus absorbed this. No, he said. I imagine you don't. He pushed off the doorframe. I'll call him in tomorrow morning. You free at 9? I can be? 9 o'clock. We'll have the conversation. Cole nodded. He was turning to go back to his class when Marcus said, Cole. He stopped. The way you crossed the floor, Marcus said, to Garza. You moved like that on purpose. Cole looked at him. I mean the pace, Marcus said. You could have walked faster. You didn't, that specific pace. Fast communicates urgency, Cole said. Urgency communicates emotion. Emotion gives him something to work with. He held Marcus's gaze. That pace communicates that I have time, and someone who has time has already decided how it ends, Marcus finished. Cole said nothing. Marcus looked at him for a long moment with an expression that was neither admiration nor simple recognition. It was the expression of a man who had spent years building something and had just realized that what had been quietly working inside it was larger than he'd known. 9 o'clock, Marcus said again. Cole went back to his class. The remaining beginners had kept working. They'd paired themselves up and continued the takedown defense drill without being asked to, which was a better sign than Cole would have predicted 6 weeks ago. He moved between the pairs, watching, correcting, a hand on Marco's shoulder to adjust his weight distribution, a word to Petra about keeping her eyes up rather than watching her own feet. Yolanda was working with Stan, the plumber. She was walking him through the balance exercise from week 1, the hand-on-shoulder weight-reading drill, with a patient, specific quality that Cole stopped to observe for a moment. Feel when it shifts, she was saying. Not after. When? Stan frowned, concentrated, tried it again. There, Yolanda said. Right there. Stan looked up. I felt it. Yeah, she said. That's what he means. The before. Cole watched for another moment, then moved on. At 6:55, he called the class in. He looked at them. 16 people, various sizes, various ages, various reasons for being there. They were sweating and in some cases limping slightly, and in all cases paying a quality of attention that had deepened across 7 weeks from polite to genuine. One thing before you go, Cole said. What happened earlier with the notebook? That's going to happen to some of you out there? Someone is going to try to make you feel like what you're doing here doesn't matter. Like learning is something embarrassing. Like being a beginner is a weakness. He looked at the room. It isn't. The person doing the mocking is the one who stopped learning. You're still going. That's the difference. No one said anything. Thursday, Colt said. They dispersed. He watched them go. Darnell and Yolanda leaving together, still talking, which was new. The Ruiz brothers arguing in the friendly way of siblings who'd both done well and couldn't admit it. Petra pulling on her jacket with the focused efficiency of someone who had a hospital shift starting at 8. Stan stayed for a moment. He was the kind of man who processed things physically before he processed them any other way, and Cole could see him working something out. The awareness thing, Stan said. I've been doing it, all week. What you said, walking into rooms and knowing where the exits are. How's that going? Strange at first. Stan rubbed the back of his neck. Now it's just, I notice more. I notice what's normal. And then I notice when something isn't normal. That's it, Cole said. That's exactly it. Stan nodded, put on his jacket. He was at the door when he said, without turning around, my son's been having trouble at school, not physical, just someone making him feel small, consistently. Cole waited. I've been trying to figure out what to tell him, Stan said. I think... He stopped. Started again. I think I know what to tell him now. He left. Cole stood in the empty class space. The rest of the gym was still running, bag work, drilling, the usual Thursday evening traffic. He could hear Travis running a combination on the heavy bag on the far end, the steady rhythmic impact of it, cleaner than it used to be. More patient. He picked up a resistance band someone had left on the floor, coiled it, put it in the bin. His phone buzzed. Linda. She's done with the deer painting. It's spectacular. Also slightly unsettling. The deer has very intense eyes. Cole typed, save it. Linda. Obviously, I saved it. He smiled, shouldered his bag. He took the long way out through the main floor, which he didn't usually do. He passed the center mat, the worn spot, and kept walking. Past the heavy bag where Travis was working, and Travis stopped his combination and looked at Cole, and Cole looked back, and something passed between them that didn't require words and wouldn't have benefited from them. Travis went back to the bag. Cole pushed through the exit. The night was cold and clear, no rain, the parking lot lamp throwing its amber circle on the wet asphalt from the afternoon's weather. He stood in the cold for a moment. Somewhere in the back of his thinking, the part that had never fully left the operational frame, that ran its quiet, continuous assessment of every environment, something had been asking a question about Garza for 5 weeks, and it was asking it now with slightly more urgency than before. Garza hadn't been surprised tonight. When Cole crossed the floor, when Cole told him to leave, none of it had surprised him. He'd looked at Cole with the arithmetic of a man doing a recalculation, not the blankness of a man encountering something unexpected, which meant he'd already had data. He'd come in with a picture of Cole that included at least some of what had happened with Travis, and he decided that it didn't change his assessment of what was possible. That was worth thinking about. A man who looked at what Cole had done to Travis and decided it wasn't a limiting factor in his own behavior was either significantly more capable than Travis or significantly less attached to conventional outcomes. Cole had seen both profiles before. He got in his truck, started it, sat for a moment with the engine running and the heater beginning its slow argument with the cold. The 9 o'clock conversation tomorrow was going to tell him which one Garza was. He put the truck in gear and pulled out of the parking lot, and the amber lamp passed over his windshield once in the rear view, and then he was on the street and the gym was behind him. He drove home through the quiet city, and he thought about Avery's deer with the intense eyes, and he thought about Stan's son being made to feel small, and he thought about Yolanda saying, "I'm not worried about in here," with the directness of a 16-year-old who had already learned that the real world didn't come with referees. He thought about 12 years of training that had been built for the hardest version of the problem and was now being spent on now 16 people who were learning how to walk into a room and know where the exits were. Ortiz used to say, "The objective is never the fight." Cole had believed that then. He believed it more now. But he also knew what you did when everything else ran out. And somewhere in his assessment of Ramon Garza, a quiet part of him was wondering if they were closer to running out than the calendar suggested. Garza showed up at 9:03. Not 9. 9:03. Cole noted it the way he noted everything, filed it without assigning it. Drama it didn't warrant. But it was information. A man who arrived 3 minutes late to a meeting called by the person who ran his gym was making a statement about whose time mattered, and he was making it small enough to be deniable. Marcus was already behind his desk. Cole was on the stool in the corner, not beside Marcus, not across from Garza, but off the axis of the two of them, which was a position he'd chosen deliberately. Observer. Witness. The person whose presence in the room had a specific meaning that Garza would have to decide what to do with. Garza came in and looked at Cole first, then at Marcus. He pulled the chair out from in front of the desk and sat in it with the looseness of a man who wanted to communicate that this situation had no grip on him. "Morning," he said. "Close the door," Marcus said. Garza reached back without turning around and pushed it shut. Marcus put his hands flat on the desk. He didn't have notes, didn't have paperwork. Cole had seen him do this before. The flat hands posture was Marcus's version of, "I have already decided what this conversation is, and the only variable is how long it takes you to understand that." "Last night," Marcus said, "walk me through what happened from your perspective." Garza glanced at Cole, back to Marcus. "I picked up a notebook that was left on the mat. I looked at it. Cole told me to leave. I left." "That's a version," Marcus said. "That's what happened." "The notebook was in a gear bag," Cole said. His voice was level. He wasn't looking at Garza. He was looking at a point on the wall above the desk, which Garza would read as disinterest and which was actually the opposite. "Not on the mat. You reached into the bag." Garza turned to look at him. "It was at the edge. It was in the bag," Cole said. The bag was against the wall. Darnell was 6 feet away. He moved his eyes to Garza then. "You know where he was?" A beat. "I don't know what you think you saw," Garza said. "I know what I saw," Cole said. "I've been watching you for 5 weeks. This wasn't the first time." Something moved across Garza's face, fast, controlled, but there. The specific micro-expression of a man who has been operating under the assumption that he hadn't been observed and has just learned otherwise. It lasted maybe half a second. Then the controlled surface was back. 5 weeks, Garza said. He almost made it sound like a question. "Darnell," Cole said. 3 weeks ago, you told him his stance looked like he'd learned it from YouTube. You said it in front of 4 people during open mat. He'd been in the class 2 weeks. He paused. "Petra, 2 weeks ago. You asked her in the locker room hallway whether she thought a fundamentals class was going to be useful given what she was up against. You said it with concern, like you were doing her a favor." Another pause. "Marco Ruiz. Last week. After his drilling session. You watched him work, and when he finished you said, 'Interesting approach,' in a tone that everyone in earshot understood and that he's been turning over since." The room was quiet. Garza's jaw was set. Not angry, working. He was deciding which version of himself to deploy. "That's a lot of interpretation," he said. "It's a pattern," Cole said. "Interpretation is for individual incidents. Patterns are just math." Marcus let that sit for a moment, then, "Ramon, I want to be direct with you because I think you're capable of hearing it. What you've been doing, the way you've been doing it, is designed to be hard to name. Small enough that the person on the receiving end thinks they're being oversensitive. Consistent enough that it works." He looked at Garza without hostility and without softness. "I know this pattern. I've seen it before. And I'm telling you now that it doesn't have a place in this gym." Garza looked at Marcus. The arithmetic was visible. How much did Marcus know? How much could be argued? What was the cost of different responses? I come in, Garza said. I train hard. I don't cause trouble on the mat. Whatever this guy, a gesture toward Cole, thinks he's been observing for 5 weeks, I'm not here to babysit beginners. If they can't handle a little, what? Cole said. Garza stopped. A little what? Cole said. Finish it. Garza looked at him. Reality. That's not reality, Cole said. Reality is that those people are in here voluntarily, learning something difficult and making progress. What you've been doing is making that harder for no reason, except that it makes you feel like you're above something. He let that land. That's not a toughness thing. That's an insecurity thing, and you know the difference. The silence that followed was a different quality than the ones before it. It was the silence of something true being said in a room where the person it was said to couldn't immediately refute it. Garza's left hand, resting on his knee, closed slightly. A fist that stopped before it was a fist. Cole noted it. Is this a formal warning? Garza said. He was talking to Marcus. Yes, Marcus said. And if I don't, what? You pull my membership? Yes, Marcus said, simply. I pull your membership. Garza looked at him. I've been training here 2 years. I know. I've brought 3 people in, paying members. I know that too. And you're going to kick me out because this guy, again the gesture toward Cole, who fixes your plumbing or whatever. Cole is a member of this staff, Marcus said. He runs the fundamentals program. When he tells me there's a pattern of behavior that's damaging to the people in that program, I take it seriously. That's not about who he is or what else he does here. That's about whether I trust his observation. He looked at Garza steadily. I trust his observation. Garza stood up. I was taller than both of them, and the office was small, and the standing was another statement, the same category as the 3 minutes late. He looked down at Marcus and then at Cole, and his expression was the expression of a man filing something away rather than releasing it. I'll be on the floor tonight, he said, and I won't go near the beginners. He said the last word with a flatness that could have been acceptance or could have been contempt with its volume turned down. That's a start, Marcus said, not the finish. What's the finish? You decide that, Marcus said. It's your call. But I'll be watching, and Cole will be watching, and if the pattern continues in any form, different targets, different method, whatever, we're done. No second conversation. Garza picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. He put it on with the deliberate care of a man who was using the action to pace his response, to make sure what came out of his mouth next was what he'd decided to say rather than what was trying to come out on its own. Noted, he said. He left. The door didn't slam. That was somehow its own statement, the controlled close of it, precise, like he was making sure they understood that he was the one deciding how it ended. Marcus looked at Cole. That went about as well as it could, Marcus said. Depends on what he decides, Cole said. Yeah. Marcus leaned back. What's your read? Cole thought about Garza's hand on his knee, the fist that stopped before it was a fist. He's not done. Whether that means he changes or he escalates, I don't know yet. Which do you think? I think he came in here having already decided this was a situation he could manage. 3 minutes late. The language, whatever this guy. He's been underestimating this gym's capacity to hold him accountable because so far it hasn't. Coles looked at the closed door. Whether last night and this morning changed that math, I'll know by watching. Marcus nodded. If it escalates. If it escalates, Cole said, I'll handle it. Marcus looked at him for a moment. You keep saying things like that. I'll handle it. Like it's just because it is, Cole said. Not dismissive, just honest. Not because I'm confident, because the alternative to handling it is letting it continue, and I've already decided I'm not going to do that. The way he said it was the same way he said most things, without decoration, without the performance of certainty that was different from certainty itself. Marcus had been listening to him speak for 4 months, and he'd noticed this about Cole. He didn't say things to convince you. He said them because they were accurate to what was in his head, and whether you believed them was your business. Marcus picked up his coffee. Travis came to me yesterday afternoon. Cole waited. He wants to start helping with the Saturday morning youth program. Not leading it, helping, showing up early, setting up, working with Marcus Jr., on the younger kids' drills. Marcus held the mug in both hands. He said he's been thinking about what you said to him in the equipment room. I didn't say much. Apparently what you said was enough. Marcus set the mug down. He said, Marcus paused, finding the quote, he told me the wrong part wasn't that someone could stop me. The wrong part was that the kid couldn't. He said he keeps coming back to that. Cole was quiet for a moment. Good, he said. That was all. Yeah, Marcus said. Good. Boom. The 9 o'clock meeting sat in Cole's chest for the rest of the day, in the particular way that unresolved situations did. Not anxiety exactly, more like a low-level monitoring state. He went to Hayward and worked his shift and fixed a coolant line on the secondary press that had been developing a slow drip for 2 weeks. And through all of it, the back part of his mind was running its quiet, continuous calculation about Garza. He knew the type. Not personally. He'd been careful over his adult life not to acquire that kind of personal knowledge, but professionally. In 12 years of operating in environments where the worst version of human behavior was the baseline rather than the exception, he'd encountered this specific profile multiple times. The man who was disciplined about his cruelty, who understood that the most effective damage was invisible. No witnesses, no single incident you could point to, just a slow, steady erosion that the target often blamed on themselves. In the context where Cole had encountered that profile before, the resolution had been definitive and not subject to interpretation, and had left no paperwork for Cole to file because no paperwork category existed for it. This was different. This was a gym. The tools available were conversation and boundary setting, and, as a final option, membership revocation. None of those were the tools he'd been trained with, which was fine. The tools you use should match the situation. But it meant the resolution timeline was longer, and the variables were less controlled. He picked Avery up from Linda's at 6:30. She had the deer painting under her arm, rolled in paper, which she presented to him in the truck with the gravity of someone delivering a document. He unrolled it carefully. The deer was formally dressed, jacket, collar, the suggestion of a tie, sitting at an upright piano with its hooves positioned on the keys with what appeared to be technical correctness. Its eyes were, as Linda had reported, intense. There was something in the expression that was simultaneously performative and uncertain, which Cole thought was actually a sophisticated emotional note for a 9-year-old to hit, even accidentally. This is good, he said. Avery studied it alongside him. The left hoof is slightly wrong. I didn't notice that. You wouldn't. You don't play piano. Do you? No, but I looked it up. She took the painting back and examined the left hoof with the critical attention she brought to her own work. Mrs. Ortega said the composition was evocative, better than imaginatively rendered. Different. Avery rolled the painting back up carefully. She asked what the deer was feeling. What did you say? Avery was quiet for a moment. Outside, the streetlights had come on. I said nervous, but trying to look like it wasn't nervous. Cole started the truck. He let that sit without commenting on it because it didn't need comment. Because everyone's watching, Avery added. Then, apparently satisfied with this explanation, she put the rolled painting on the seat beside her and pulled out her sketchbook and started drawing something new. Cole drove home and thought about a deer at a piano and a man who showed up 3 minutes late to a meeting to make a point about whose time mattered. Garza came to Blackridge that Friday. He trained. He kept to himself. He didn't go near the beginners, not the Thursday class members, not anyone in Marcus's Saturday youth group orbit. He ran his drills, worked his combinations, interacted with the fighters on his own level in the normal shorthand of people who'd trained alongside each other for a while. Cole watched him from the equipment room doorway while he repaired a cracked buckle on a sparring helmet. Not constantly. In the way he watched everything, peripherally, in registered intervals. Garza knew he was being watched. Cole could tell by the specific quality of how Garza didn't look at him. The too careful avoidance that required more muscular effort than genuine disinterest did. Saturday came. Travis was at the youth program at 8 in the morning, which Cole learned from Marcus in passing. He set up the mats and ran the warm-up drill with Marcus's son, who was 19 and had been running the program with Marcus on weekends. Cole wasn't there. Saturday wasn't his Blackridge day. But Marcus sent a text at 9:47 that said, Travis was good today. The kids liked him. Cole read it at lunch and put the phone back in his pocket and felt something he didn't immediately label, which was sometimes the most honest response to something good happening. Avery spent Saturday at a friend's house. Cole spent it doing the laundry, fixing a cabinet hinge in the kitchen that had been loose for 3 months, and running his 4 miles later than usual because he'd slept until 6:30, which he almost never did, and which his body apparently needed. He sat with coffee on Sunday morning and wrote notes for the next fundamentals class. Not a formal lesson plan. He'd never worked from formal lesson plans. The format didn't suit the way he thought. But a sequence. Where they'd been, what the next layer was, which individuals needed specific attention. Yolanda, ready to start working on movement. Her balance was good enough. She needed to understand direction changes. Not athletic agility, but purposeful direction changes. Moving with intention versus moving with reaction. Darnell. The flinch was mostly gone. Start working on what came after the flinch, the moment of contact, how to read it, what it told you. He was the furthest along of the original 6. Marco Ruiz. Technical gifts, consistency problems. He learned fast and then got bored and started experimenting, which was fine eventually, but right now meant his base was inconsistent. Needed work that required sustained attention. Stan, the slowest learner in the room physically, the most consistent in application. He drilled what he was given with the patience of a man who'd spent his career on problems that required patience. Cole had started to suspect Stan was going to be one of the better practitioners in the group by the time it mattered. He wrote for an hour, then made breakfast, then called Linda to confirm Tuesday pickup for Avery's after-school time. And by noon, he was at the hardware store picking up the re-anchor bolts he'd need for a job at Blackridge on Monday. And the day was ordinary in the way that ordinary days were. Not dramatic, not weighted with significance, just a day being used. He needed those days. He'd learned to value them in a way he hadn't when he was younger, when ordinary days had felt like waiting for the real thing. Monday night, Cole arrived at Blackridge at 8. Standard work order. 3 items. Routine. He was 20 minutes in replacing a worn cable on the lat pull-down machine when Garza walked in. Not unusual. Garza's training schedule wasn't fixed, and he came in several evenings a week. Cole noted his arrival, noted the time, noted that it was later than Garza usually arrived for an evening session. He went back to the cable. He'd gotten the old cable out and was threading the new one through the guide wheel when he heard Garza's voice, and heard, behind it, a voice he recognized. Darnell. Cole came around the equipment rack. Darnell had come in to do extra work. He'd been doing that, showing up on non-class nights to practice the drills Cole had given him. Cole had seen him here twice in the past 2 weeks, always working quietly on his own, running the balance exercises and the movement sequences with the earnest repetition of someone who'd decided to take this seriously. Garza had intercepted him near the mat. They were talking. From 10 feet away, an observer who didn't have context would see a normal exchange. 2 people standing at the edge of the mat, conversational body language, nothing overtly aggressive. Cole moved closer. What he heard was Garza's voice in the register he recognized. The quiet, almost friendly tone, the one that was doing something the loudness would prevent. Just saying it's worth thinking about whether you're in the right class. Nothing wrong with where you are. Some people, Garza paused, choosing. Some people are better served by something more basic. Darnell was standing with his weight slightly back, gear bag on his shoulder. He hadn't put it down, which meant he'd been on his way to the mat and Garza had stopped him in transit. "I'm good where I am," Darnell said. "I'm not saying you're not," Garza said. He had his hands up slightly, the gesture of a reasonable man, nothing hostile here, just offering thoughts. "I'm saying the fundamentals class Cole runs isn't, it's got a specific vibe, right? It's not really for people who want to actually compete or actually get serious. It's more," he tilted his head, searching, "therapeutic." Darnell looked at him. "Therapeutic. For people who need confidence building, that's fine. That's a real thing. It's just, if you actually want to improve, Garza." Cole was 6 feet away. Garza turned. The quick calculation across his face was visible this time, less controlled than in Marcus's office, because this was unplanned. Cole hadn't been supposed to be in this part of the gym right now. His appearance was off script, and Garza's expression took a half-second to find its composed setting. "I'm just talking to the kid," Garza said. "I heard what you were doing," Cole said. He looked at Darnell. "Go put your stuff down." I'll work with you in 10 minutes. Darnell looked between them, nodded. He walked past Garza without looking at him, which Cole noted as a marker of something that had changed in the past 7 weeks. 6 weeks ago, Darnell would have looked at him, would have checked. Now he walked past and went to the mat. Cole looked at Garza. You told us you'd stay away from them, Cole said. I ran into him at the door. You were at the lat machine when he came in, Cole said. You walked over here. That's not running into someone. Garza's jaw tightened. The performance of reasonableness was harder to maintain when the facts were this specific. You're not going to watch me every second. No, Cole said. But I was here, so I saw it. He stepped slightly closer, not in a threatening way, in the way of a man reducing the space so that what he was about to say didn't have to be said with any volume at all. I told you in Marcus's office. I watched the room. I've always watched the room. That's not going to change. Garza looked at him. The arithmetic was happening again. What was available to him, what the cost of different moves was. His eyes went briefly to Cole's hands, then back to his face. That was interesting. What happened with Travis made the rounds, Garza said. Low now, close. They were having the actual conversation, the one underneath the policy conversation they'd had in the office. People talk. I know. They say you put him down before most people understood what happened. Travis made a choice, Cole said. I responded to it. That's all that happened. But not all that you are, Garza said. He was watching Cole's face with a focused attention that was different from the way he usually watched things, sharper. Like he'd been wanting to say this for a while and was saying it now because the opportunity had arrived. I've been watching you since the Travis thing, the way you move, the way you watch a room. A pause. I know what that looks like. I've seen it. Cole held his gaze, waiting. I did 8 years, Garza said. Army, combat engineer, 2 deployments. He said it flat. Not for sympathy, not for credibility, just information. I came back and I trained because training is the only thing that helped my head settle. And I got good enough to have the record I have to do what I do here. He looked at Cole. And I walk in here and the quiet guy in the gray shirt who fixes the machines. He stopped, exhaled through his nose. What branch? Cole said nothing. I'm not asking to make friends, Garza said. I'm asking because it matters to me. Why? Cole said. Because if you're what I think you are, Garza said, then I've been... He stopped. Something moved across his face, not the controlled surface, something that was below it, harder to manage. I've been behaving like an idiot in front of someone who is actually... He stopped again. His jaw was set. Not in hostility, in the specific expression of a man who is having a reckoning they hadn't scheduled. In front of someone who understands what it costs. The gym moved around them, bags and music and footwork, the usual Friday texture of the place. Neither of them was part of it for a moment. Cole studied him. This was the thing about Garza that was different from Travis. Travis's damage had been clean, ego, performance, the straightforward architecture of a talented person who'd never been made to account for the gap between how they treated people and how they expected to be treated. Straightforward to name, straightforward to address. Garza's was more complicated. 8 years. 2 deployments. Combat engineer, which meant he'd been in the physics of actual explosions, the consequence of errors measured not in points but in people. He'd come back and trained because training was the only thing that settled his head. Cole had said something nearly identical to Marcus about why he ran his miles and worked his pull-ups. And somewhere in that return, in those 3 months at Blackridge, something had curdled. The thing that had gotten him through 2 deployments, the need to be the most capable person in a given situation, the habit of measuring every room and finding yourself sufficient, had turned into something that required other people to be lesser. Cole understood the mechanism. He'd been careful not to let it become his own. He wasn't sure he deserved full credit for that. Avery was a large part of why he'd stayed oriented. 9 years old and absolutely willing to tell him when he was wrong about something, with the directness of someone who hadn't learned yet that being honest with people had social costs. Naval Special Warfare, Cole said. 12 years. Garza absorbed this. Nodded once, slowly. The nod of a man who has confirmed a calculation. I behaved badly here, Garza said. Not dressed up, just said. Yeah, Cole said. The people in your class didn't deserve that. No. A beat. I don't know if I can fix it, Garza said. With them. With the kid especially. You probably can't fix it, Cole said. You can change what you do going forward. That's a different thing. Is it enough? I don't know, Cole said. That's not really my call. It's theirs. Garza looked at the mat where Darnell was going through his balance exercises, the weight reading drill, practiced solo, feeling his own weight shifting and learning the before. He watched him for a moment. He's getting better, Garza said. Yeah, Cole said. He is. They stood there for a moment that was uncomfortable and not empty. The discomfort of two people who had been adversarial and were navigating what came after that without either of them being entirely sure there was a script for it. I'm going to talk to Marcus, Garza said. Tomorrow, on my own. No. I'll set it up. He doesn't need to arrange it. He looked at Cole. I'm not asking you to trust that. I'm telling you because you'll find out anyway, and I'd rather you hear it from me. Okay, Cole said. Okay, Garza said. He picked up his bag from where he'd set it on the bench, started toward the main floor, then stopped. Cole. He didn't turn around. The thing you said to Darnell, first night, when Travis... He paused. When Travis left him on the mat, I heard you tell him that fast was information, that the feeling was worth remembering. Cole waited. I've been thinking about that, Garza said, as a principle. He walked to the main floor and started warming up. Cole watched him for a moment, then went to the mat where Darnell was waiting. Sorry about that, Cole said. Darnell looked up from his drill. You don't have to... I know I don't have to, Cole said. I am anyway. He crouched down to Darnell's level. Where were you? Darnell understood what he was asking. Not the confrontation, but the drill. He shifted. Weight reading. I was trying to feel the shift before... Show me, Cole said. They worked for the next 35 minutes. Cole pushed him harder than he usually did. Not cruelly, but with the specific increased pressure of an instructor who had decided a student was ready for the next level of difficulty. He put Darnell in positions that required the balance reading in real time, under actual mild resistance, not just theoretical. Darnell got it wrong twice, reset, got it wrong again, and on the fourth attempt felt the weight shift before it happened and moved with it, instead of against it, and stood up looking at Cole with the expression of someone who has just understood something in their body that they'd previously only understood in their head. There, Cole said. Yeah, Darnell said, slightly out of breath. Yeah, I felt it. That's the before, Cole said. That's what we've been building to. Darnell nodded. He was quiet for a moment, processing. Garza said the class was therapeutic. Yeah, Cole said. Is it? Cole looked at him. It builds something real. What you call that is your call. He stood up. Is it working? Darnell thought about the weight shift. The before. His notebook and his gear bag with the notes from 7 weeks of Thursdays. Yeah, he said. It's working. Then the label doesn't matter, Cole said. He left Darnell to finish his session and walked back through the gym. Past the bags, past the grappling mats, past Garza running his combinations on the far end with the focused economy of someone doing real work. Marcus was in the equipment room doorway, arms folded. He'd been watching. Garza, Marcus said. He's going to come see you tomorrow, Cole said. On his own. Marcus studied him. You believe that? Cole thought about it. I think he's deciding whether to be what the worst part of his experience made him or what the rest of it made him. He looked at Marcus. I don't know which wins, but I think the conversation is real. What changed? He asked what branch, Cole said, and I told him. Marcus was quiet for a minute, processing the weight of that simple exchange. And that was enough? Marcus said. It was enough to make it a different conversation, Cole said. Whether it's enough for what comes after it, that's on him. He picked up his toolbox. Marcus watched him cross the floor toward the exit. Cole, he said. Cole looked back. Marcus seemed like he was going to say something and then reconsidered and said something different. Good work tonight. Cole nodded once. He pushed through the exit into the cold and walked to his truck and sat in it for a moment before starting the engine, the parking lot quiet, the amber lamp doing its job. He thought about 8 years in the Army and 2 deployments, and a man who trained because it was the only thing that helped his head settle, who had gotten good enough to have a record and a reputation, and had somewhere in there developed a habit of cutting people down, small enough that they thought they'd done it to themselves. He thought about 12 years of his own and the particular way it lived in you afterward, not as trauma in the simple sense, but as a reorientation of the world. Everything had weight. Everything was assessed. The exits were always known. He thought about what the difference was between him and Garza, and whether it was something he'd done or something that had happened to him at the right moment, the particular intervention of a 9-year-old girl who needed him to be present in a way that left no room for anything else. He wasn't sure he'd made better choices. He thought he might have made choices in a different order, at a different time, under different pressure. That kept him from being able to look at Garza with the clean judgment of a man who knew he'd never walked the same road. He started the truck, drove home through the city, under the orange lights, into the ordinary night. Avery was asleep when he got home, which he'd expected. Linda had texted at 8:50, out cold, finished her homework and then just gone. Kid runs on a timer. Cole let himself into the apartment quietly, checked her room from the doorway, confirmed the breathing, confirmed the sketchbook on the nightstand where she'd apparently been drawing until the timer ran out. He didn't look at what she'd been drawing. He'd see it in the morning when she showed him, which she always did, holding it up with the specific gravity of someone presenting evidence. He made tea instead of coffee. It was late enough that coffee was a commitment he didn't want to make, and sat at the kitchen table with it, and did nothing for a while. He sat with Garza in his mind the way he sat with problems he hadn't solved yet, which was to say he didn't actively think about them. He let them occupy space, let the edges become clear on their own, the way objects in low light eventually revealed themselves if you didn't try to force them. What he'd seen in Garza's face when he said 8 years, Army, 2 deployments wasn't the performance of contrition. It was the recognition of a man who had been operating in one context and suddenly understood he was in a different one. The specific recalibration of realizing that the person you've been managing isn't a civilian, isn't someone who will accept your framing because they don't have the framework to question it. Cole had seen this before too. In reverse, mostly, he'd been the one doing the recognizing. 2 people in a room, and one of them suddenly understood something about the other that changed the geometry of everything. It didn't always lead somewhere good. That was the part he hadn't told Marcus, because Marcus didn't need the full complexity of it to make his decisions. Sometimes recognition produced accountability, and sometimes it produced resentment, and sometimes it produced a man who decided the situation had gotten too complicated and removed himself from it entirely. He'd know which one Garza was within the week. He drank his tea, rinsed the cup, and went to bed. Garza went to see Marcus on Tuesday morning. Cole learned this from a text Marcus sent at 11:14. He came in. We talked for an hour. I'm going to let him stay. A pause, and then a second text. He asked if he could apologize to the fundamentals class. Formally. In person. I told him that was your call. Cole read both texts in the Hayward break room. He thought about it while he finished his lunch, which was a sandwich he'd made that morning with the focused efficiency of a man who ate because it was operationally necessary and not because he'd developed a particular relationship with the activity. He texted back, Thursday, before class starts, 5 minutes. He says what he needs to say, and then he goes back to his own training. Marcus. I'll tell him. Cole put the phone away and finished the sandwich. He spent the rest of Tuesday's shift thinking about Thursday, but not in the way of a man anticipating drama, more in the way of someone reviewing a sequence before executing it, making sure the order was right, that each piece was where it needed to be, that the outcome he was aiming for was actually achievable and not just desirable. What he wanted was simple. He wanted the 16 people in his fundamentals class to be able to walk into Blackridge on Thursday evening and work without the low-grade weather system that Garza had been generating. He wanted Darnell to be able to bring his notebook without it becoming a target. He wanted Yolanda to ask her end-of-session questions without having anyone in the room who'd decided her curiosity was evidence of something lesser. He wanted the Ruiz brothers and Petra and Stan and the 10 people who joined in weeks 4 through 7 to have a clean space. That was the objective. Garza's personal growth was secondary. Real, maybe. He'd sensed that it was real. But secondary. The objective first. Everything else in order after that. Thursday at 5:45, Garza was in the main gym running a light warm-up when Cole arrived. He stopped when Cole came through the door. Cole looked at him and nodded once. 5 minutes, stay there. And went to the mat to set up for the class. The 16 people arrived between 5:50 and 6. They came in the usual way. Darnell early, already changed, gear bag down, going over the notes in his notebook. Yolanda and Petra together, mid-conversation. The Ruiz brothers separately because they'd apparently had an argument about something on the drive over and were conducting the tactical silence of brothers in a ceasefire. Stan in his work clothes because he'd come straight from a job. Cole waited until they were all there. "Before we start," he said, "Ramon Garza wants to say something. He's got 5 minutes." He looked at them, making sure the next part landed clearly. "You don't owe him anything, not your attention, not your acceptance. But I think it's worth hearing." He looked at Garza. Garza came to the edge of the mat. He wasn't in fight mode, none of the posture that came with it. He stood the way a man stood when he'd decided to stop managing an impression and was just standing. He looked at the group, specifically at Darnell. "I was wrong," he said, "not in a general sense, specifically, to specific people in this room." He didn't elaborate on the incidents. Cole had told him not to, because listing them would make it about the list and not about the acknowledgement. "I did it in a way that was hard to name because I kept it small. I know that's worse, not better." He stopped. His jaw worked slightly. "I'm not asking you to be okay with it. I'm asking you to know that I know it was wrong and that it won't happen again." He paused. "That's all I've got." He looked at Cole. Cole gave him the small nod that meant done. Go back. Garza walked back to his section of the gym. The class was quiet for a moment. Not the uncomfortable silence of people waiting to be told what to feel. More the silence of people who just received information and were processing it at their own speed. Darnell was looking at his notebook. He closed it and put it in the bag. Stan said to nobody in particular, "Huh." Yolanda looked at Cole. "Can we start?" "Yeah," Cole said. "Let's start." He ran them hard that Thursday. Not punishingly, but he pushed the level, pulled back the scaffolding on some of the earlier drills, and asked them to run them without the structure he'd been providing, to find the principles on their own. Some of them did. Some of them struggled, which was the right kind of struggling, the kind that happened at the edge of what you understood and pressed you into the next thing. Halfway through the session, Cole was working with Marco on a direction change drill, and he caught himself doing something he didn't usually notice himself doing. He was enjoying it. Not the performance of instruction, the actual thing, the specific pleasure of watching a person understand something in real time, of seeing the moment when the body caught up to the concept and they felt it instead of knowing it. He'd felt something like it before, in very different contexts. When a drill he'd run with his team 100 times finally coalesced into fluid execution. When the sequence stopped being a sequence and became a single continuous movement. But that had a different frequency to it, a harder edge. This was quieter. He didn't analyze it in the moment. He filed it and kept working. At the end of the session, 6:55, right on schedule, he brought them in. He looked at all 16 of them. Darnell with his notebook out again. Yolanda with her arms crossed, attentive. Stan with his hands on his knees, slightly out of breath, but not by much anymore, which was itself a marker of progress. The Ruiz brothers side by side, the ceasefire apparently concluded. 8 weeks, Cole said. You've been doing this for 8 weeks. He let that sit for a moment. I want to tell you something about where you are. He looked at the group. You're not where you were. You move differently. You see differently. That's real. That's something you did, not something I gave you. He paused. What I want you to understand is that this is the beginning of something, not the end of it. What you've built here is a foundation, and a foundation is only valuable if you keep building. He stopped, looked at them. Questions, he said. Darnell raised his hand, the specific half-raise of someone who was aware this wasn't that kind of environment, but was doing it anyway out of habit. Are you going to keep running this, the class? Yeah, Cole said. Same time? Same time. Darnell nodded, satisfied. Yolanda, what's next? What are we building toward? Application, Cole said. We've been working on principles. Next phase is putting them under real conditions. Mild resistance, then increasing resistance. The principles have to hold when someone's actually pushing back. That sounds like sparring, Marco said. It sounds like that, Cole said. It's different. How? Sparring is about winning, Cole said. What we'll be doing is about understanding. The The goal isn't to beat the person across from you. The goal is to find out where your awareness breaks down and fix it. He looked at Marco. If you end up beating them in the process, that's information too. But it's not the goal. Marco considered this. That's weird. It'll make sense in a few weeks, Cole said. He dismissed them. Oh. Marcus was waiting for him in the equipment room. He was sitting on the storage unit with his coffee. It was probably cold. It was always cold by this point in the evening. And his arms folded in the way that meant he had something to say and was deciding how to say it. Cole set his bag down. What? I want to make you an official staff position, Marcus said. Not maintenance. Not additional thing. Staff. Instructor. Fundamentals and applied training. I'll pay you a proper hourly rate. He paused. More than $40 a session. Cole looked at him. I also want to talk to you about the Saturday youth program, Marcus said. Travis is helping. Marcus Jr. is running it. But there are kids in that program who need what you have. Not the combat application. The awareness. The thinking. He set his coffee down. The deer at the piano. Cole stared at him. Marcus looked slightly uncomfortable. Avery told Marcus Jr. about the painting. He told me. He held up a hand. I'm using it badly. What I mean is the thing about being watched and trying not to look like you're scared. That's the kids in the Saturday program. Some of them come from situations where that's their everyday. And they're learning to throw hands, but nobody's teaching them the first thing, which is the thing you teach. He looked at Cole. Awareness. Knowing the room. Having time before you need the rest of it. Cole was quiet. You don't have to answer now, Marcus said. I need to think about the schedule, Cole said. With Avery. I can't. I know, Marcus said. Work it out and tell me what fits. I'll build around you. And the maintenance work. You can keep it, Marcus said. Or not. That's up to you. He paused. The building doesn't need as much maintenance as you've been doing, Cole. I think we both know you do more than what's on the work order. Things need fixing, Cole said. Yeah, Marcus said. But that's not why you do it. Cole looked at him. You do it because you're comfortable in the edges, Marcus said. In the maintenance role, the maintenance position, where nobody expects much of you and you can just watch. He wasn't saying it critically. He was saying it the way he said things he'd observed over a long time that he'd been waiting for the right moment to name. That was fine when you first came here. I think it might be getting small for you now. Cole thought about what he'd felt during the class tonight, the thing he'd filed. I'll think about it, he said. That's all I'm asking. What? He thought about it for 4 days. He thought about it on his morning runs, on the drive to Hayward, while he was diagnosing the hydraulic system on line 3 that had developed a noise it shouldn't have been making. He thought about it in the small hours when he woke at 3 and the apartment was quiet and the radiator ticked. He thought about Avery's question in the truck. Is being noticed good? And his answer depends on the situation. He'd believed that when he said it. He still believed it. But he'd been using it as a reason to stay invisible, and those were two different things. On Friday evening, he called Linda. Can I ask you something? Of course, Linda said. There was television in the background. She turned it down. Avery's doing well at school, he said. She is, Linda said. And the art program. Very well. If I took on more hours at Blackridge, he said, not maintenance, teaching, some evenings and maybe Saturday mornings, would that be workable? The pickup schedule, Cole, Linda said. He stopped. Yes, she said. It would be workable. I love that kid. You know that. A pause. Can I say something that isn't my business? You usually do, he said. Not unkindly. He heard her settle, the specific sound of someone adjusting their position to have a real conversation. When you first started the maintenance work at that gym, I used to watch you come pick her up and think, that man is hiding, not from Avery, from himself. She paused. I don't know what changed in the last few months, but something changed, and I think you know what it is. Cole was at the kitchen window. Outside, the street was quiet. A neighbor walking a dog in the lamplight. Yeah, he said. I think I do. So say yes, Linda said. Whatever they're asking. He called Marcus the next morning, Saturday, 7:12, before his run. Marcus picked up on the second ring, which meant he was already awake, which Cole had assumed. Yes, Cole said. To both. the instructor position, and the Saturday youth program. I need to work out the schedule details. Come in Monday, Marcus said. We'll sort it. One condition, Cole said. Name it. The class stays what it is. I'm not turning it into a competition program. The objective doesn't change. Agreed, Marcus said, without hesitation. And Garza, Cole said. What about him? He's been doing what he said he'd do, Cole said. All week. I've watched. If that holds through the month, I want him to have the option of engaging with the fundamentals program. Not as a student, as someone who could eventually help. He paused. 8 years in the Army means he has something worth passing on if he figures out how to pass it on right. A beat. You sure about that? Marcus said. No, Cole said, but I think it's the right direction. I'll keep watching, Marcus said. You keep watching. Yeah, Cole said. That's what we do. 3 weeks later, Cole was running the Thursday class, when the door opened and a woman came in with a boy who was maybe 13, small for his age, with the specific posture of a kid who'd learned to take up as little space as possible. She spoke briefly with Marcus at the door, and Marcus pointed toward Cole's class, and she brought the boy over. Cole was in the middle of a direction change drill with the group. He paused. The woman looked at him. Marcus said this was the right class for him. She put her hand briefly on the boy's shoulder. He's been having a hard time at school. Cole looked at the boy. The boy was looking at the floor, then at the mat. Then, carefully, at Cole. The look of someone assessing whether the room was safe. What's your name? Cole said. Jordan, the boy said. Quiet. Jordan. Cole crouched slightly so they were at eye level. Not performing it, just doing it, the natural adjustment. You done any training before? No. That's fine. Cole straightened. We're working on something called direction changes. It sounds simple. It isn't. You want to watch for a minute before you try it? Jordan looked at the group on the mat, at Darnell, who was the closest and who, picking up on something in the situation, had slowed his own drill down slightly and given Jordan something readable to watch. At Yolanda, who was working with steady, focused precision that communicated competence without any kind of showmanship. Yeah, Jordan said. Okay. Cole stepped back. Let him watch. He gave him 90 seconds, then said, Ready? Jordan stepped on the mat. They worked for the remaining 40 minutes of the class. Jordan was tentative at first, standing slightly outside the full commitment of each movement, hedging, leaving himself a margin. Cole didn't push it. He put Jordan with Darnell for the paired drills, which was deliberate. Darnell was patient, was good at explaining because he'd only recently learned the things he was explaining, and had a natural absence of the performance quality that made some of the more experienced practitioners intimidating to beginners. By the end of the session, Jordan was on the mat with both feet. Not advanced, not particularly skilled, but present, which was the first thing. After Cole dismissed the group, Jordan's mother was waiting at the edge. She looked at her son when he came off the mat, and her expression was the expression of a woman reading a change in something she'd been watching closely for a long time. Small, but there. Jordan looked at Cole. Is this what you teach? Just this? This is where it starts, Cole said. There's more after this. Can I come Thursday? Same time, Cole said. Jordan nodded. He picked up the gear bag his mother had been holding and slung it over his shoulder, and the posture was almost different from the way he'd come in. Not transformed, not the arc of a movie, just the first millimeter of a thing that would take months. Cole watched them leave. Darnell was beside him, gear bag over his own shoulder, notebook in hand. He'd been doing the book for 11 weeks now, and it was half full. Cole had looked at it once, at Darnell's invitation, and found it detailed and precise and occasionally wrong in interesting ways that indicated genuine thinking rather than rote copying. You did that on purpose, Darnell said, putting him with me. Yeah, Cole said, because I'm not that much further ahead. Because you remember what it felt like to not know, Cole said. That makes you a better partner for him than someone who's forgotten. Darnell considered this. Is that why you're a good teacher? Cole looked at him. Because you remember, Darnell said. What things cost, you haven't... He searched for it. You haven't let yourself forget. Cole picked up his bag. Go home, Darnell. Darnell smiled. Not the uncertain smile of the kid who'd been sitting on the mat with blood on his lip 11 weeks ago, but something that had more ground under it. He went. Marcus caught Cole at the door. It was late. The gym was clearing. The last of the evening regulars were packing their bags. And Travis was sweeping the mat on the far end with the focused attention he brought to everything now. He'd started showing up earlier and staying later, doing the work that needed doing without being asked, which was its own kind of evidence. "Walk out with me," Marcus said. They went through the exit together. The November night was fully cold now, the kind of cold that had some weight behind it, the first real suggestion of the winter coming. The parking lot had 2 cars left in it, Cole's truck and Marcus's older SUV, both under the amber lamp. Marcus put his hands in his jacket pockets. "You know what Blackridge was when I bought it?" he said. "Boxing gym," Cole said. "No. I mean, what it was for. The guy I bought it from, Anthony, he'd been running it for 20 years, and I asked him once what he thought the point was, and he said—" Marcus paused, remembering it. "He said it was a place where you could come and be bad at something in front of people and keep showing up anyway." He looked at the parking lot. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately, because I let it turn into something else. I let it turn into a place where you proved something, and the proving required someone to be less than you." Cole waited. "What you've done here in the last 3 months." Marcus stopped, tried again. "The class. The way the main floor has changed. Travis, which I still don't entirely understand, but I'm not questioning. Garza starting to come around." He looked at Cole. "That didn't happen because you demonstrated you were the most dangerous person in the building. It happened because you chose not to be, consistently. Even when it would have been easier to just—" He made a gesture. "Use what you have." Cole looked at the pavement. "I've been trying to think about what to call that," Marcus said. "I don't have a clean word for it." "You don't need one," Cole said. "No," Marcus said. "But I wanted you to know that I see it." They stood there for a moment in the cold, not uncomfortable. The silence of 2 people who'd arrived at the same place from different roads and didn't need to make a ceremony of it. "Monday," Cole said. "Schedule." "Monday," Marcus agreed. Cole went to his truck. Marcus went to his SUV. They left the parking lot in different directions, and the amber lamp stayed on over the empty asphalt, doing its job. He got home at 9:50. Avery was awake. He could tell by the light under her door the specific quality of quiet that was occupied rather than absent. He knocked. "Come in." She was in bed with her sketchbook. The room was warm, the lamp on the nightstand throwing a yellow circle, her hair down and messy in the way it got by the end of the day. She looked up when he came in, and then looked back at her drawing, which was the greeting of a person who was engaged in something but glad you were there. Cole sat on the edge of the bed. "You're late," she said. "Little bit." "How was the gym?" "Good," he said. "A new kid came in, young, 13. Avery kept drawing. "Was he any good?" "Not yet," Cole said. "He will be." "How do you know?" Cole thought about Jordan stepping on the mat. Both feet. "He showed up," he said, "and then he stayed." Avery nodded as though this were a satisfactory data point. "Is that enough? Just showing up?" "It's the first thing," Cole said. "Everything else comes after." She turned the sketchbook and showed him what she was drawing. A figure on a mat. She'd heard him talk enough about the gym that she had a rough visual vocabulary for it. Around the figure, other figures in various positions, some standing, some in motion. She'd drawn the floor with a specific attention to the worn spot at the center, which she'd apparently heard him mention once and retained. "What's this one?" he said. "The gym," she said. "From how you describe it." She looked at the drawing. "I can't get the center right. The worn spot." Cole looked at it. She'd put the spot slightly off-center, which was actually more accurate than perfect center would have been. It had gotten worn to the side over years of footwork that favored one direction. He hadn't told her that detail. "It's good," he said. "It's not finished," she said. "I know," he said. "It's still good." She took the book back and kept drawing. He watched her for a while. The small room, the warm lamp, the sound of her pencil on paper, the radiator doing its honest work. At some point she said without looking up, "Daddy." "Yeah." "Are you happy?" He didn't answer immediately, not because he didn't know, but because the question was specific enough that it deserved an honest answer, rather than a fast one. He thought about the class tonight. Jordan on the mat. Darnell's notebook. Yolanda asking her end-of-session questions with the precision of someone building a real model. Stan going home to tell his son what to tell himself. He thought about Marcus in the parking lot saying, "I wanted you to know that I see it." He thought about 12 years of training and 4 years of maintenance and 3 months of something that had turned out to be different from both. "Yeah," he said. "I think so." Avery nodded, still drawing. "Good," she said. Simple. Like it was information she'd needed and had now filed. "You?" he said. She didn't answer right away. Then, "I think so too, mostly." "Mostly?" "I still can't get the deer's left hoof right," she said. Cole almost laughed. Didn't quite. "You'll get it." "I know," she said. "I just haven't yet." He stayed until her eyes started going heavy over the sketchbook, until the pencil movement slowed and the line between drawing and dreaming started to blur. He got the book out of her hands without waking her and set it on the nightstand and turned off the lamp and stood in the dark doorway for a moment. The apartment was quiet. The radiator. The street outside. His own breathing, steady and even, 4 miles a morning for years, the rhythm of a man who had decided to stay. He went to the kitchen, stood at the counter in the dark for a moment. He thought about what he was going to tell his class next Thursday. He thought about Jordan's posture when he came in and the millimeter of change when he left. He thought about Garza's hands on his knees in Marcus's office, the fist that stopped before it was a fist, the 8-year vet doing his own arithmetic in real time. He thought about Travis sweeping the mat at the end of a Thursday night without being asked. He thought about what Marcus had said, that it hadn't happened because he'd demonstrated he was the most dangerous person in the building, that it had happened because he'd chosen not to be. He thought about Ortiz and the training cadre saying the objective is never the fight. He'd spent 12 years learning how to fight and 4 years deciding not to. And somewhere in the middle of a maintenance job at a gym, he'd never intended to matter to him. He'd found the thing that Ortiz had been pointing at the whole time. The actual objective, the one that the fighting was supposed to serve. You built something. You made room for people. You paid attention to who was being made small, and you stood between them and the thing making them small. Not with a weapon, not with a record, not with your history in places nobody could mention. With your presence, your time, your willingness to walk across a floor at a pace that said you had already decided how it ended. Cole Maddox had once been one of the most capable men the Navy could produce, trained for the hardest version of the problem, sent to places where the cost of errors was measured in the only currency that couldn't be refunded. He was now a maintenance worker and part-time instructor at a combat gym in an ordinary city, raising a 9-year-old who drew deer at pianos and foxes in council chambers and couldn't get the left hoof right. He had never been more useful. He turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. The strongest version of a person is rarely the one they show first. It's the one that stays after everything else has been stripped away. After the titles, the reputation, the need to prove something to someone who stopped being worth proving it to a long time ago. What's left, when all that falls off, is either nothing or everything. The men and women who end up meaning something to the people around them are almost always the ones who found out which one they were, and then showed up anyway,